Welcome to video 10 of the Stone Women presentation. This is video 10 of 12. In this video, we're finally getting around to laying out entirely two things that I've said I'm going to get to in this presentation, which is Utah and the Mormons and the United Nations, which also used to be called the League to Enforce Peace. And in the last video, video 9, I laid out the ancient conspiracy and how they operate. And what the ancient conspiracy is Lucifer and Cain's church. And that priesthood, like their false, corrupt priesthood, practicing priestcraft, and how they infiltrate the governments and the churches and flatter people with their vain and flattering and smooth words. And the people like it, and they want it, and they don't really want to face the truth. And if they don't, and they don't change their ways, then what happens is the entire civilization gets wiped out. And we've seen that in the scriptures several times, where God's people, God's covenant people, taken to the right locations, the covenant locations, given a chance, they do wicked. This ancient conspiracy grabs a hold and does its thing, and there's a complete wipeout. And we talked in the last video about how that's our current awful situation, and Moroni is very clear about that. The Old Testament and the New Testament are also very clear about laying out that this has been since the beginning, and it plays out. It's what killed Jesus Christ, he himself born in the Jerusalem, King Solomon's temple location, where he had previously given the patterns for that temple to David and King Solomon, and they set up the priesthood and things were correct there. But by the time God himself is born in that location, they're all telling him he's wrong when he's saying, you're wrong. Like, it gets super twisted and messed up. But ultimately, the people believe their leadership, the high priests, who are saying we have no king but Caesar, knowing that this is very well is 100% the king of the Jews, the son of God. And he's telling them, hey guys, you're saying you live the law of Moses, you're saying you're doing all the temple ordinances, you're saying I'm not who I say I am, you're trying to kill me, but I'm telling you I'm him. I'm the giver of the law of Moses. I am the law. I'm the light and life of the world. I'm the one who gave you these things. And if you were living them, and if you were, the temple was what it's supposed to be, and you were really doing things correctly, you would not have any issue with me at all. But instead, you're listening to your leaders, the high priests, who are part of the ancient conspiracy, pretending to be leaders of light when they're just ravening wolves in sheep's clothing. You're listening to them and you're killing me for it. So that's the ancient conspiracy. Great video on that, laid it all out. Now we're gonna see how that's playing out right now in our time. But also running parallel with the ancient conspiracy is the ancient covenant God made with mankind. Adam, Noah, then Abraham, then Jacob, whose name got changed to Israel, then Joseph of Egypt, then Lehi, and Nephi, who was the remnant that escaped out of Jerusalem, went to the Bethel Luce location, St. Louis, Missouri, Mississippi Valley, Israel Valley, all that land, the promised land, which is most of what we call the United States of America nowadays. And then eventually after that, they lived, they prospered, and then they got taken over by the ancient conspiracy and got wiped out. The Lamanites and the robbers that tapped into the ancient conspiracy and that wiped everyone out, they remained on the land. And so when the white man, the British Empire, the Spanish missionaries, when they show up and conquer what we now call the United States of America, the Native American Indians, the brown people that were there are the Lamanites, the seed of Joseph. And then not too many years after that, there's this man named Joseph Smith Jr. who pulls ancient Egyptian records that talk about the Nephites in these lands out of a hill. We're going to talk a little bit about this right now, in New York, which is a pyramid in New York. And he pulled these plates out of there, translated them, and that's what's called the Book of Mormon. And when Joseph Smith translated those records and published the Book of Mormon, God said, you are the seed of Joseph, go to Missouri. The location, the Jacob, Joseph of Egypt, Abraham location. Go there. And when they got there, kill them. The black robes, the priestcraft order that puts up the kings and the governments and runs those and is the real force behind everything, kill them. Get rid of them. Official order from the government, kill the Mormons. Get them out of Missouri. Get the seed of Joseph out of here. We don't want this stuff happening. That's what we're going to take a much deeper look at right now. But Joseph Smith Jr. is the ancient covenant continuing. Joseph Smith Jr. is the seed of Joseph of Egypt being brought back into that location with the records of the seed of Joseph, which is what we now call the Book of Mormon. And remember that when Lehi got the plates of brass and started to read them, it contained prophecies of Joseph of Egypt, and Joseph of Egypt was prophesying that there's going to be a man in the future that's of my seed, and he's going to have the same name as me, his dad's going to have the same name as me, and he's going to bring forth a word, a book that tells about my seed in these lands, and it's going to be published to the world as the writings of the seed of Joseph alongside the writings of the seed of Judah, the Bible. He's going to bring forth the Book of Mormon, and so we're going to have both the Book of Mormon and the Bible, the records of the seed of Joseph and the records of the seed of Judah, because they were both given two different locations. Seed of Judah, that's David, that's Solomon, where Jesus Christ was born. They were given the Jerusalem location. But the seed of Joseph, which is the seed of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, which is the seed of Abraham, they were promised the Missouri location, where Jacob specifically marked St. Louis, Missouri, the city of Bethel, called Louis in the beginning, with his pillar, the vertical ladder, the gate between heaven and earth, that's right there. We're going to look at all that right now. But just to say that Joseph Smith Jr. is who Joseph of Egypt prophesied would bring forth this word and would take his remnant back into the covenant location, which is Missouri. And that's exactly what Joseph Smith Jr. did, is he took the Mormons, just the people trying to believe in and follow the writings of Judah and the writings of Joseph, take them back to Missouri, and they get there, and the black robes go kill them. But just like we see right here in Genesis 50:24, Joseph of Egypt speaking says, God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land unto the land which he sware unto Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob. Way back then, and we've seen the pattern over and over and over again. They said it, Joseph said it, Jacob said it, Abraham said it, their seed always taken back to the correct location, the covenant location, Missouri. Okay, so where does this Joseph Smith Jr. story actually start? To put it simply, he was confused and he was just trying to find some answers. He was listening to a bunch of different pastors, a bunch of different, like very similar to nowadays, like there's so many different churches, so many different pastors, prophets, leaders, teaching this and that. Some of it's the same, some of it's different, which one's correct, which one's not. It's quite confusing. And in the last video, we talked about how Moroni said, I see you guys talking to us nowadays. And he says, every single one of your churches is polluted. No exception. There is no church that is exempt. Not the Mormon church, not the Catholic church, not the Jewish churches, the Muslim churches. There is no church that is exempted, that is not polluted. All of them are polluted right now. Moroni said so. And Joseph Smith, and I explained in the last video, we'll cover it more here, but when Joseph Smith translated these things and they got to go to Missouri and the order is to kill him, this ancient conspiracy was already in control positions and they wanted to squash what was happening. We're going to read more about that. But Joseph Smith in that time period, it was just like, who, where, what's the truth? Everyone's saying something different. What's the truth? And so he just did something real simple that all of us can do, and is where a lot of the stuff I've shared throughout this presentation has come from, is how I have acquired this information. If you want to look at it, like, it's really been just this simple thing where you can pray to God, ask God a question, and he gives answers. It's the knock and ye shall receive, ask and it shall be opened unto you, seek and ye shall find. These are promises, these are eternal promises and principles that were the same when Adam was alive, and that's going to be the same however many years from now. It's always the same thing. God's eternal, he exists, he's real, he's the ultimate intelligence, and we have the ability to ask him questions and get answers. Super simple. If you haven't done it in your life, I highly recommend that you do. Pray to God in the name of Jesus Christ and ask him some questions and see if the answers come. But also part of it is you gotta have good reasons for getting these answers, right? Like if it's just deceit and deception and you want personal gain and stuff, like, well, God's gonna look at that and go, yeah, like why would I answer you? You're not after it in the right way. But if you just like really want to know the truth because things are confusing and you're willing to act on that truth when that answer is given to you, regardless of whatever it is, that is a promise from God that if you ask, you'll receive. That simple. So that's what Joseph Smith did. He was confused by everything as like a young teenager, and he decided to ask, and he got an answer. And the answer that he got was probably a lot bigger than what he had maybe anticipated. And that's if he really anticipated anything. I don't think, when you ask, if you anticipate, I don't know, like God has his ways of answering. So like, I just don't think there was really a whole lot of expectation. It's just like, I know God's there. He says we can ask him stuff and we'll receive. So I'll ask the question and just see what comes. And what came was pretty grand, like what happened, because he was visited by, remember how we talked about Moroni in the last video, and Moroni's the last one to write records about the Nephites that get buried into the hill Cumorah, which Joseph Smith later translates. He was the last one of the Nephite civilization that survived, but until he died. And then what happened when Joseph Smith prayed and he just asked God, like, hey, what's the truth here? Like, every church is saying something different. Which one's yours? What should I believe? An angel appeared to him, and it was Moroni, now a resurrected being. And an angel, Moroni, now appears to Joseph Smith and says, hey, here's the answer to your question. All the churches are polluted. But God also has a task for you if you're willing to accept it. There's these gold plates that contain the history of my civilization. We used to live in these lands, but we got wiped out by this ancient conspiracy. And if you're willing, Joseph Smith Jr., I'll eventually tell you where these plates are at. You can go get them, and you can be an instrument in God's hands to translate those writings and publish them to the world. The Seed of Joseph records, you can publish them to the world because it needs to be published alongside the Bible, the tribe of Judah writings. And so Moroni tells Joseph Smith Jr. about these plates of gold with the Nephite records on them written in ancient Egyptian inside of a hill called Hill Cumorah, which is located in Palmyra, New York, upstate New York. And remember, once again, the word pyramid never shows up in the scriptures, not one time. Old Testament, New Testament, Book of Mormon, not in there. But we know that these civilizations did build pyramids, and in those time periods, pyramids were being built. So when they're constantly going in and out of mountains and hills, that's their pyramid architecture. Mountains, hills, mounts, mounds, pyramid architecture. So Moroni, who was part of these ancient Egyptian influenced people, they were living in pyramids and building pyramids, and he hid up these records in a pyramid. And then he goes to Joseph Smith and goes, there's these records in a pyramid. Need you to go pull them out and translate them. And that hill was called Hill Cumorah. Right here in Mormon 6:6 in the Book of Mormon says that hid up in the Hill Cumorah all the records, save it were these few plates which I give unto my son Moroni. So a Mormon who compiled a bunch of different records onto these gold plates just to kind of summarize everything, puts it all on the gold plates, and then and he's about to die, and so he hands a few more plates to Moroni and says, keep taking record of what transpires from here forward, and when it's time, deposit it all, put it all back into this hill, into this pyramid, and then eventually God will have a seed of Joseph come and grab them and translate them. A seed of Joseph of Egypt, which is Joseph Smith Jr., to be clear. And right here in Mormon 8:14, it says, I am he who hideth up the record unto the Lord, and whoso shall bring it to light, him will the Lord bless. Referring to, and they knew, they were hiding these up, and they knew that in the future, these are going to be pulled out of the pyramid and translated and published to the world. So here's the Hill Cumorah, or the pyramid covered in dirt and shrubbery. Just a few different images of it right here. And like I mentioned before, it's been reworked and reshaped several times, which we'll see a little bit of right here. But if you just look at these pictures, it's really looking like the shape of a pyramid. And like I've showed you before, when you look at this pyramid down in Mexico, it used to look like this hill just covered in dirt and shrubs. But when you take off the dirt and shrubs, it's actually an ancient pyramid, which is exactly the same Hill Cumorah thing that's going on. So here's another look at Cumorah. And you'll see there's this interesting architecture right here. Now they used to have like plays and stuff that they did on the hill. Maybe this is a play, like, built for the play. Maybe this is some original that got covered up. I don't really know right here about these specific things, but I tend to think maybe this is more just like a replica set that they built on the hill. But regardless, they're still showing that it's a pyramid. And now when we look at it today, this is what it looks like. Just like I've showed you several other times throughout this presentation, there's pyramid architecture under dirt, under grass, under shrubbery, and sometimes they very, and lots of times they very intentionally go and plant dirt and grass on top of it, so it just looks like a grass hill, but it's actually just a pyramid. But if you go to Hill Cumorah today, this is mainly what you see is just a bunch of grass that has been laid down. And then there's also an interesting story, and this is a story. I don't really know if this is super true or not. It does make sense to me though, especially when you consider that this is probably just a pyramid. And so the story is right here where this red arrow is kind of pointing, that there was a kid who was just running around and exploring out here, and he fell into a hole. And this is what that hole looked like. It exposed a room built of bricks. Just sharing that again, it's you know, people tell this story like it's true, and that makes a lot of sense to me. And there's oftentimes the story of Joseph Smith getting the plates as him digging up out of the dirt and finding the plates. But then there's other stories where he went into a hill and there were rooms with shelves lined with different records. And like we just read right here, let me go back to it, Mormon hid up in the Hill Cumorah all the records which had been entrusted to him. Like a lot of them. He had a lot of different records, and he compiled them all onto the plates of gold just to condense everything and summarize everything so that it's a shorter, like actually readable book for us in the future. So Mormons going into this hill depositing a bunch of records. And there's also stories of Joseph Smith going into a hill, and there's a room full of like shelves and records, and Laban's sword is hanging on the wall. And then there's this story of this kid just having fun playing around, and he falls into a hole. They got to go find him, and when they find him and grab him, well, there's this interesting room with bricks and stuff, showing that there's clearly some man-made stuff going on here. So I really think that we're just talking about a pyramid, and a pyramid in upstate New York, which is not far-fetched. That whole area up there is very mountainous, and I think that's what you're looking at across most of the country. Almost always is, I think we're looking at pyramid architecture. And so Moroni was commanded to hide up the records along with interpreters, so that whoever, Joseph Smith Jr., whoever pulled them up out of the hill, out of the pyramid, would then be able to translate this ancient language. And so it's saying Moroni was commanded that he should hide them up again in the earth, and he was also commanded that he should seal up the interpretation thereof. Wherefore it says, I have sealed up the interpreters according to the commandments of the Lord. So he also when he hid the records, the plates of gold, he also hid with them interpreters, so that whoever finds these gold plates, these records of the Nephites, the seed of Joseph that escaped out of Jerusalem, has the stones, the interpreters, that he needs to translate this ancient language. And behold, these two stones I will give unto thee, and ye shall seal them up also with the things that ye shall write. I will cause in my own due time that these stones shall magnify to the eyes of men these things which ye shall write, meaning they're going to be used to interpret this language. The Lord commanded him that he should seal up the two stones which he had received. And these two stones are the same two stones that are mentioned in the Old Testament as the Urim and the Thummim, which they put into the breastplate of judgment. So Joseph Smith used the Urim and the Thummim, these interpreters, these stones, to translate ancient gold plates with ancient Egyptian writings from this remnant that escaped from Jerusalem and settled the Mississippi Israel Valley, where Jacob had previously marked the spot with his pillar. And that is what is now called the Book of Mormon. It's called the Book of Mormon because Mormon was the main person to compile it all together. That's what it's called. But really what it is another testament of Jesus Christ and the covenant God made with Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, and then Lehi, and then Joseph Smith Jr. It's literally just the continuation of that ancient covenant playing out all the way up until our time. And also the ancient conspiracy playing out all the way up until our time. It's telling both of those stories. It's saying, here's God's people and God's dealings with them, and then here's the ancient conspiracy and how they take everything over and wipe everything out. So once again, Joseph Smith Jr. used the Urim and the Thummim to translate Nephite records, which is seed of Joseph records, written in Reformed Egyptian, and published it as the Book of Mormon. And if we look at the Nebraska capital, which is, I'll show you in a second, but is not far at all from Missouri, well, there's a bunch of ancient Egyptian writing on the exterior of this Capitol building, alongside Moses, Egyptian pharaohs, King Solomon, a bunch of men wearing robes with a bunch of unique symbols, animal sacrifice, sword of truth, rods, scepters, all that sort of just random stuff that the cowboys and coal miners were into, right? But I would say that this Nebraska Capitol building is just a leftover from the Nephites. It's a leftover from the seed of Joseph, called the Nephites, in the Jacob-Joseph promised location, and they were masterful architects, masons, and priests. And so the introduction of the Book of Mormon right here says, it is a record of God's dealings with the ancient inhabitants of the Americas and contains the fullness of the everlasting gospel. The book was written by many ancient prophets by the spirit of prophecy and revelation. Their words, written on gold plates, were quoted and abridged by a prophet/historian named Mormon. He was the compiler. The record gives an account of two great civilizations, one that came from Jerusalem in 600 BC and then separated into two nations known as the Nephites and Lamanites, which I've laid out, and then the other, the Jaredites, came from the Tower of Babel when the Lord confounded the tongues of the people, but he didn't confound this family's tongue, and he brought them to the promised land location also. And after thousands of years, all were destroyed except the Lamanites and the robbers that were still on the land, the robbers and murderers of Gadianton, the ones who tapped into the ancient conspiracy, the ones that infiltrated the government and owned all the judgment seats, the judges and the lawyers and their officers, the whole Black Robe Priestcraft order. Those people were still here. But the Nephites got completely wiped out, and the Jaredites got completely wiped out. And the Lamanites and the robbers that were left on the land, those are what were called and are called the Native American Indians. But that's not what they are. They're the Lamanites. They're the seed of Joseph, the remnant that escaped out of Jerusalem, plus the robbers and murderers of Gadianton, because they never went anywhere. They also survived. And like I've said, Joseph Smith translates these ancient records, publishes the Book of Mormon. God says, go to Missouri. They go to Missouri, and the government goes, kill him. So let's look at who killed Joseph Smith. The common thing that's said about who killed Joseph Smith is the mob. The mob, okay, that's a little bit of a vague term, but also, is it? Or can we say the mob is the band of robbers and murderers of Gadianton, which was the band of Kishkumen, which grew out of the order of Nehor, which is just the King Noah and his priests escaping into the wilderness and doing everything they can to get back into their priestcraft position and appoint a king so that they can be the secret priests ruling behind the scene, and they have a king that centralizes everything so they can just rule nice and easily through that king. But it's really the secret priestcraft order behind the scenes doing everything. That's the mob. The mob is the ancient conspiracy, the robbers and murderers of Gadianton in control of the judgment seat positions. They're the ones that murdered Joseph Smith Jr. If we read back in the Book of Mormon, there were many of those who testified of the things pertaining to Christ, who testified boldly, like Joseph Smith Jr. did, who were taken and put to death secretly by the judges. Judges have the power to kill and get away with it, to murder and get away with it. Entire countries, individuals, all of it. 3 Nephi 6:27, those judges had many friends and kindreds, and the remainder, yea, even almost all the lawyers and the high priests did gather themselves together and unite with the kindreds of those judges who were to be tried according to the law. The judges, their friends, their family, and the high priests and the lawyers, all in conspiracy, all conspiring to murder and get away with it. They did enter into a covenant one with another, even a covenant which was given by them of old, started with Lucifer and Cain, which covenant was given and administered by the devil to combine against all righteousness. Therefore, they did combine against the people of the Lord. Joseph Smith translate the book, publish it, take the people to Missouri, kill the people. Kill the seed of Joseph, get them out of Missouri. We don't want this here. Government orders. What are we reading right here in the Book of Mormon? The judges, the lawyers, the high priests, they all get together and they go, let's combine against the people of the Lord. Let's murder them and get away with it. They entered into a covenant to destroy them and to deliver those who were guilty of murder from the grasp of justice. And so if we come right here, I've got this backed out so you can see this is a Missouri.gov website. And if you read, it says that Governor Boggs issued an infamous extermination order to kill all the Mormons and Joseph Smith and that whole thing when they arrived at Missouri. For some, like, dude, aren't the Mormons just this silly little made-up church? Why is there such a big deal when they get to Missouri to get them out of there? Why is it such a big deal to murder Joseph Smith Jr.? If it's just this silly little nothing, guys making up stories about a random book, what's the big deal? It's a big deal for some reason, which we're about to see more of, but when they're getting into this Missouri spot, extermination order, kill them, approved by the Black Robes, no consequences, go ahead and kill them. This secret Priestcraft order is the mob that murdered Joseph Smith Jr. and many of the other saints at that time. Now let's talk about the United Nations. This gets a little intense here, but it is what it is. And it's exactly what the scriptures are saying. Old Testament, New Testament, Book of Mormon. There's an ancient conspiracy. That's why things are weird in the world. Wake up to it. Your situation is awful. It's among you. Here it is among us. So we're going to talk about the United Nations temple lot. When Joseph Smith was commanded to go to Missouri by God, he was to go to Independence, is the city in Missouri that it's called, because that will be, and we'll read the verses here in just a second, but that's the center place for God's kingdom on earth. That's the center place of the covenant location promised to Abraham, Jacob, Joseph of Egypt, Lehi, Joseph Smith Jr. The seed of Abraham, the seed of Jacob, the seed of Joseph of Egypt. And when Joseph Smith was told by God to go to this specific Independence, Missouri location, where when they got there, they said, kill him, get rid of him. Part of that, the location in Independence, Missouri is called the temple lot, because the story goes that they were supposed to go there and build a temple as the center place for God's kingdom, his throne, basically. So you'd think, well, that's the Mormon temple lot then. That's, it's a Mormon location. It's a Mormon historical location. So why is it the United Nations temple lot? Why is the United Nations involved? And even way more than just involved. So I'll show you right here. And let's just remember, and I'm going to show you right here, that the United Nations used to be called the League to Enforce Peace. In the last video, I talked about the ancient conspiracy is huge on part of their vain and flattering words, their smooth, lying deceits, is peace and safety. God's constantly calling them out for saying they're telling you peace, there is no peace. When you hear peace and safety, destruction cometh. So like I've already said, God commands Joseph Smith Jr., the seed of Joseph of Egypt, to go back to the Missouri location. So the seed of Joseph of Egypt, which right now is Joseph Smith Jr., is returning to Missouri, the St. Luce Bethel location. Not that specific, I'm going to explain this in a second, not in that specific city of Missouri. They're in a different city of Missouri, but it's still Missouri. It's still that state. It's not at all very far away from St. Luce. So we got the seed of Joseph of Egypt going back to the location. Doctrine and Covenants 52:2, and Doctrine and Covenants, like I've explained before, is when Joseph Smith is visited by Angel Moroni and is told where these ancient records are at, is told to translate them. He also starts documenting just some of these stories and kind of what's going on, and that's what's in the Doctrine and Covenants. So what's in Doctrine and Covenants is like 1830s and 40s, what Joseph Smith and some other people are up to, and they're just kind of documenting that. And it's, so right here it's saying in D&C 52:2, saying that go to Missouri, and it's saying that Missouri is the land which, this is God speaking, I will consecrate unto my people, which are a remnant of Jacob, and those who are heirs according to the covenant. So God's very, very clearly saying, Joseph Smith Jr., you're a remnant of Jacob, actually the seed of Joseph of Egypt, because that's who that line continued through. And he's saying, go to Missouri. I'm taking the remnant of Jacob back to the location, the correct covenant location. D&C 5242 says, go to the land of Missouri, which is the land of your inheritance, because they're the seed of Jacob, and that land was promised to Jacob and Joseph of Egypt, and their seed for forever, of which Joseph Smith Jr. is, and of which Lehi and Nephi are. And he says also, it's now the land of your enemies. Just like before, when God was taking his people there, their enemies were there. And so same things happen in here. Go to Missouri. It's the land of your inheritance. You're the seed of Jacob. You're the seed of Joseph of Egypt. It's your land. Your enemies are there, but I'm going to take you there. Once again, D&C 57:1, the land of Missouri, which is the land which I have appointed and consecrated for the gathering of the saints. This is the land of promise and the place for the city of Zion. The place which is now called Independence is the center place, and a spot for the temple is lying westward upon a lot which is not far from the courthouse. So it's saying this Independence, Missouri location, which we're going to look at in a second, is the center place of this Jacob promised location land, covenant location land. So I'll show you in a second. If we put this as the dead center place and we draw a circle around it, it's very interesting what is right inside and on the rim of that circle. So right here. Over here, we've got St. Louis, Missouri, where Jacob dropped his pillar, and there's the gate and the mighty Mississippi River, which feeds all of Israel Valley, Mississippi Valley. And then over here, basically very near the other border of Missouri, so the opposite side of Missouri, close to Kansas City, Missouri, is where Independence is located. So this is where God sent Joseph Smith Jr. and the Mormons to the center place, like we saw right here. The place which is now called Independence is the center place, Independence, Missouri. So if we draw a circle around it, if we put Independence, Missouri at the dead center of the circle, if we come over here to the right, the very edge of it, I drew the circle a little bit bigger just so it didn't cover up this St. Louis dot right here. But if we look at this circle right here and go to where Jacob's pillar is marked, well, there's the gate, the entrance to this center thing, to this God's throne on earth, this promised covenant location. The very center of it, Independence, Missouri, the very entrance of it from east to west, like how the light comes from east to west, and there's this gate, and a gate is oftentimes an entryway. So that's what we're seeing right here, this gate location, the gate of heaven and earth, where Jacob, named Israel, dropped his pillar. Boom, there's the entrance into this special location from east to west. Just how light travels, and light is God, light is Jesus Christ. East to west, coming through the gate, entering the location, dead center of it is Independence, Missouri, and we're going to look at this specific location in just a second. But there's also a couple other very interesting things. When you set as the gate as the entrance, and you draw the circle that way, well, now it encompasses two particular buildings that I've been showing you throughout this entire presentation. It shows you the Des Moines, Iowa Capitol building, that palace that I've shown you over and over again. And also right inside of here is the Lincoln, Nebraska Capitol building. The tower with the Egyptian eagle, the sower on top of it, casting seed into the earth. All that right here inside of that circle. Gate, entrance, center point, Independence, Missouri. What's also inside of there? Des Moines Capitol building, Nebraska Capitol building. Two buildings that are very, very obviously perfectly matching Nephite architecture, Nephite symbolism all over them, even ancient Egyptian writings on the exterior of the Nebraska Capitol. Kind of matches. So just a reminder, when I'm talking about Jacob's Pillar in St. Louis, Missouri, it's this one right here. And just a few miles away, there's the Gateway Arch, the gate from east to west. Remember, and the guy said, people were like, why would we spend money on that? Why not more practical things? And the guy says, well, spiritual things matter just as much. because this is all spiritual stuff. So you got Jacob's pillar, the gateway arch, the entryway gate, and they both sit on the mighty Mississippi River. And if we go back to Genesis 28:17, this is where Jacob said, "How dreadful is this place? This is none other but the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." And he saw angels coming up and down on a vertical ladder. Going back to another verse in Doctrine and Covenants, this is Doctrine and Covenants 84:2. It says that that place shall also be the city of New Jerusalem. I'm going to explain in this video the difference between New Jerusalem and Old Jerusalem, but just worth mentioning right here that this location is also being referred to, this Independence, Missouri, this Jacob's inheritance spot is the city of New Jerusalem. And it says that this city shall be built beginning at the temple lot, Independence, Missouri, which is appointed by the finger of the Lord in the western boundaries of the state of Missouri. Kansas City, Independence, Missouri, that area right there. And behold, this one's very important. A lot of people say a lot of different stuff, but the scriptures are very clear. God is very clear about this, especially when you take account of this whole pattern we've watched of him constantly bringing the seed of Abraham, the seed of Jacob, the seed of Joseph back to one specific location, the most choice location above all other locations on earth. God says, "There is none other place appointed than that which I have appointed. Neither shall there be any other place appointed than that which I have appointed for the work of the gathering of my saints." For the gathering of the seed of Jacob and Joseph of Egypt, that is one specific location, which is Missouri. There is no other location. Those people will be gathered to no other location. That is their location. Gathering Israel in other locations, nope. There's one location, Missouri. The only other location is for the tribe of Judah, which is in Jerusalem, which is Utah, which I'm going to explain in just a second. And now if we go to Revelation 3:12 in the New Testament, here we are again talking about New Jerusalem and a pillar and like just this whole pillar thing in the New Jerusalem location. So it says, "I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. I will write upon him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven, and I will write upon him my new name." So here's New Testament talking about a New Jerusalem being a temple of God and talking about a pillar there again. Revelation 21:2. John the beloved, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. We'll come back in the next video and talk more about this bride adorned for her husband, because that's going to help us understand who and what the stone woman is. Okay, so here's a look at Independence, Missouri. And here's a look at the location that is said to be the temple lot. So if we read this verse right here, Doctrine and Covenants 57:3, it says, "Behold, the place which is now called Independence is the center place, and a spot for the temple is lying westward upon a lot which is not far from the courthouse." So Independence, Missouri, center place, but then it says there's also a spot close to it, which is where the temple is supposed to be built. And this is what is referred to as the temple lot. And so right here is what is called the temple lot or the temple site in Independence, Missouri. And here's a sign, and it's an interesting sign. It says, "August 3rd, 1831, Joseph Smith Jr., prophet and founder of the Church of Christ, with 7 other church leaders, dedicated this site for the temple in the city of Zion, where this church believes the Lord will come to his people in the last days." Okay, this one's interesting because it says where this church believes the Lord will come. Just like they said with the sign when Pilate wrote the sign and hung it up on the cross of Jesus Christ, and it said Jesus Christ, King of the Jews. And then the high priest came, this secret priestcraft order, and said, "Hey, how about you write, they think, he thought, he believes he's King of the Jews." And Pilate goes, "I know what I wrote. He is the King of the Jews. That's why I wrote it that way. I'm not going to change it into a deceptive sign." And then right here, if this is the real location, then we might be seeing exactly that, where they say, this church believes this will happen, or is this the place and this will happen and this is what is actually going on. But the people who make signs and use signs, say, this church believes it. It's just this silly little church thing. If it is that silly little church thing, then why is this actually called the United Nations Peace Plaza? I'll show you that in just a second. But really interesting, there's this old gray stone building right here with a huge dome on top of it, like a huge dome. Very interesting. And a grass hill. Very interesting. When you drive into Independence, Missouri, right here, you can see that elevated on top and poking just a little bit above the trees. Like the only thing you can really see at the top and poking up is that huge dome on the temple lot, and then also this huge spire right here, which I'll show you this spire in just a second. But here's just a quick video driving in as you're going down, then you come back up, but that's what sits at the top of this whole thing right here. Okay, and this is how it's kind of divided up right now, this temple lot section, because what happened is when they murdered Joseph Smith, there wasn't, like, the church kind of fractured at that point. Some people thought they should go do things one way, other people thought they should do things another way. People tried to put themselves in leadership positions and claim they're the successor of it all, and it just got super messy, and there were different, like, branches of it created. You know, you got the Mormon Utah branch, which went out to Utah, which is like the main one that people know about nowadays, but there's also several other ones that have still claimed and maintained a lot of, you know, like the early teachings of Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon and stuff like that. So what happens right here is a few different of the branches of Mormonism from back then claim different parts of this site. And I say own, but we'll see in a second who the real owner currently is of this site, and it's very telling. But just to take a look at how this is kind of divided right here. So 1, 2, and 3. 1 is the Church of Christ, 2 is the Community of Christ, and 3 is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is the Utah Mormon Church. So the Utah Mormon Church has this section over here, and then the Community of Christ Church has this section, which includes that huge dome building, and then it also includes this section over here, which is the building with the huge spire on it. I'll show you that in just a second. And then this section right here is the section that the Church of Christ owns. Explain it in just a second. Here's another look at how that's divided up. So got the temple lot right here. Here's that building with the huge dome on it. Here's the building with the huge spire. And right here is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Utah Visitors Center. So just again showing you what this little section looks like and how these different branches of the original Joseph Smith Mormon Church, just kind of have things divided up currently. And then here's a look at the building with that huge spiral steeple tower on it. Now, they made this look like stone, and there's a little bit of stone used on the exterior, but it's not a solid, thick, everything stone type building, and it's definitely a newer build. So I'm not saying that this one is ancient architecture. It's not. It's a much newer build, made to look like it's kind of out of stone, but it's not really made out of stone. It's just kind of given a stone facade. But there's also this building, which is an old ancient castle, and its towers right here on both sides have been stripped off. Those used to be much taller and larger, but an interesting piece of architecture sitting right here. Also, there's this stone building, which is definitely a bunch of brick and a bunch of stone. And this is the remnant of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And some of these churches have changed their names a couple times, so it gets a little bit confusing to know like which church is which, and because this one changed its name to this one, and this one used to be known like this, so it gets a little bit confusing. But that's not, trying to dissect all that is not the point of this at all. I'm just showing us that there's supposedly several different Mormon churches owning this site. Nope. The United Nations own this site. The United Nations, also known as the UN. And let's define the word united. What is the first word in this definition? Combined. Like combinations. Like secret combinations. Like ancient conspiracy, oaths, and covenants, and secrecy and secret judges getting away with murder and all of that, a secret priestcraft order. And then when you look up the definition of united, because I want to know what the United Nations is about, combined into a single entity. 3 united companies functioning as a single unit. Several different things combined into one. The definition of combination: a joining or merging of different parts or qualities in which the component elements are individually distinct. Separate things combined into one. Secret combinations. Combining things secretly for secret purposes. And they used to be called, this United Nations used to be called the League of Nations, but before that it was called the League to Enforce Peace, aka secret combinations. This whole peace thing, went through that in the last video, gonna do it again a little bit more here. There is no peace. Peace and safety means destruction's incoming. And here's the League to Enforce Peace, for some reason involved heavily with this silly Mormon temple lot location. And so here's an interesting article about the League of Nations. And what do we see as their symbolism? A robed woman, crowned, holding a sword of truth in mockery. Like I've explained before, there's God and his real symbols, and I'll get around to in the next video who the stone woman and her symbols, what that really is. But we can see right here, this secret combination, United Nations, is using that symbol in mockery. And this is a very interesting article. It says a lot of very interesting things. But if we look at this section specifically, it's talking about like setting up international courts, and it says, how shall this court be appointed? How shall its decision be enforced? There is but one answer: by a League of Nations. And then it says, your responsibility. This is a movement in which every man and woman in the United States can share. Here comes vain and flattering words, smooth deceits. You believe in the principles here set forth. You want to make the world safe against the menace of future wars. You think the progress of civilization depends upon the cooperation of all the peoples of the world. Is that what Jesus Christ said when he says, I have other sheep of this fold that I'm going to go visit? Does he say, I got to figure out how to unite all of you? Does he say progress of your civilization depends on the cooperation of all peoples of the world? No, he divides, he separates his people from the wicked, he destroys the wicked, and even his righteous that remain, he still lets them be in different locations. But the League to Enforce Peace, well, they want everybody under their control. You believe that teamwork, which won the war, should be continued and utilized for the world's future prosperity. The League to Enforce Peace offers you an opportunity to do something about it. Let us inspire you. Let us speak to you these vain and flattering words. You can do it. We can do it. We can prosper. We can become way more civilized. We just all have to unite under these secret combinations. And they're telling you very clearly right here, this is the League to Enforce Peace. Enforcing peace is of the devil. It is not of God. It is from the being that fell from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, who said, I will be like the Most High. And what does this faker and all of his church and secret combinations of organizations, what do they preach? Peace and safety, peace and safety, peace and safety. And what does the scripture say about peace and safety? When they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them. The scriptures are very clear. When you hear these peace and safety words, alarm bells need to be going off, and you need to see it for what it is. It's lies, it's deceptive, and it's actually leading to destruction, and not a long time from now. Sudden destruction cometh upon them. Ezekiel 13:16, there is no peace, saith the Lord God. The prophets of Israel prophesy concerning Jerusalem. They see visions of peace for her, and the Lord God says, there is no peace. The prophets are lying to you. Matthew 10:34, I came not to send peace, but a sword. Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. This is God speaking, Jesus Christ speaking. Think not I'm come to send peace on the earth. I'm not coming for that. I'm not coming for peace. I'm coming with a sword to divide. And that's Matthew 10:34. The next verse, he doubles down even more and explains this even more clearly. He says, I'm come to set man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. This is how serious God is about dividing his people from the people that are not his people. Even in one family, a father, a brother, a daughter, a mother, a family, he comes to separate his people inside of that family from the people that are not his people inside of that family. If the whole family is all his people, awesome, best case scenario. If that's not the case, boom, division. I'm not coming to send peace, I'm coming with the sword. So much so that I'm gonna divide father from man, daughter from mother, daughter-in-law from mother-in-law. If you're all my people, cool, we're all together then. If you're not, even if you're mother and daughter, divide you. I want my people and I want the wicked gone. Isaiah 29:16 talks about the ancient conspiracy, Lucifer and Cain and all their followers, and what do? They turn things upside down, and that's exactly what we're about to see right here. That's exactly what the United Nations is. It's a turning of things upside down. It's enforcing peace when real peace is not enforceable. It can't be enforced. And God never tries to enforce peace. But the fake God, Lucifer and Cain and all their followers, they go, let's enforce peace. Let's unite things, let's combine things, let's have these secret combinations, and let's use vain and flattering words, peace and safety, peace and safety, peace and safety, and really all we're doing is destroying all of you. And then it's also interesting to see that the United Nations and its agencies are immune from the laws of the countries where they operate. Wow, what? The United Nations immune from laws of the country, just like the ancient conspiracy we just read about. They were immune from the laws of their country. They had their own court systems. They were living and doing things completely separate from the laws of their country. If they broke any of the laws of the country, they got away with it. The only time they didn't get away with stuff is if they let the secret out, then they're dragged into the secret courts and judged according to those secret courts. But the laws of the country means nothing to us. And then here the United Nations, the United Combinations, and its agencies are immune from the laws of the country where they operate. Kind of similar also to what we learned in this Freemasonry book, where they talk about the policy of secrecy, which has been a wise one since the beginning, and they're able to operate in every country because they don't claim a specific religion. So they just say, yeah, bring whichever the religion of your book is into our lodges, and that's fine. And that's how they maintain themselves in all the countries. And then it continues and it says, the United Nations is an amazing collection of entities and organizations, some of which are actually older than the UN itself and operate with almost complete independence from it. Like organizations of old that have been operating from ancient times of old. And so now let's really evaluate this Independence, Missouri center place of Zion temple lot, Mormon temple lot location. Because right here, we'll see everything I just showed you. Here's that big dome building, completely gray, stripped of whatever preciousness used to be on it. And then right here in front of it is that grass lot with that sign that we read. That's what they call the temple lot, the temple site. And then over here, you've got that castle building that I showed you, and then also this huge spire building right here. But then also there's this girl in a dress right here flying a dove, and she has kind of her feet on the firmament, except she doesn't really have clearly defined feet. It turns into kind of this shadowy type of thing that's standing on this depiction of the firmament. Okay, now if I back this picture out a little bit more, what is this called? It's called the UN Peace Plaza. That right there is really all it takes to connect all of the dots. How is this place, this silly little Mormon location, this seed of Joseph location, all that's just silliness and hoax, right? Why is it the UN Peace Plaza? Why is the UN interested at all in this site? And not just interested, why is it their Peace Plaza? And why is there a not a stone woman, but in a robe, flying an eagle. It's this girl who doesn't really have feet, doesn't really have a proper foundation, standing on the firmament in a skimpy dress, flying a dove. Is this the UN Peace and Safety Plaza? Or is this the New Jerusalem temple lot, the location promised to Jacob and Joseph of Egypt and Lehi and Joseph Smith Jr.? Or is it both? Is this the actual spot and the secret combination is saying, we got it, it's ours? Lamentations 1:10 says, the adversary hath spread out his hand upon all her pleasant things. For she hath seen that the heathen entered into her sanctuary, whom thou didst command that they should not enter into thy congregation. So it's talking about the devil and his church. And it says that they spread out their hand upon all her pleasant things, all God's pleasant things, like his center place location. And she's seen, God has seen, it's using she, God's not a she. That will make much more sense in the stone woman next video when I explain all that. But it says that the heathen, the wicked, have entered into her sanctuary, her sacred place. It's saying the devil has his hand upon her pleasant things. The devil has entered into her sanctuary. The people that have you've been commanded to keep out of your congregation, they're in it and they got the pleasant things and they're inside the sanctuary. So why is the Mormon temple lot, the seed of Joseph location, the seed of Jacob location, why is it the UN Peace Plaza? Why is it the Peace and Safety Plaza? Because the devil has spread his hand upon her pleasant things, has infiltrated her sanctuary. And the people were commanded that they should not let the devil enter into the congregation, and they let it in. They let in the wolves in sheep's clothing. If we go to Doctrine and Covenants 101:43, it tells us exactly why the saints, when they got to Missouri, why God allowed them to get kicked out. Because God obviously can offer all the protection against the ancient conspiracy, the wolves in sheep's clothing, the enemies. We saw that previously when he brought the Israelites into this location. And he succeeds at bringing them back to this location. They got it. But then something happens. And this is what he says. He says, I'll show unto you a parable that you may know my will concerning the redemption of Zion, including these specific locations. He says, there's a certain nobleman whose God had a spot of land, a very choice land, most choice above all the other lands, the Jacob and Joseph, Abraham promised location. And he said to his servants, go into my vineyard, even upon the very choice piece of land, and plant 12 olive trees. He's saying, bring the tribes back to the location. And then he says, set watchmen round about them, build a tower, that one may overlook the land round about, to be a watchman upon the tower, that mine olive trees may not be broken down when the enemy shall come to spoil and take upon themselves the fruit of my vineyard. So he's saying, boom, 12 olive trees, 12 tribes of Israel back in the most choice land location, the covenant location. And he says, these are instructions, build a tower, put a watchman on the tower to watch for the enemy, so that when the enemy comes, you see it coming from far away, and you can deal with it and shut it down before it ever enters. But then it says, while they were laying the foundation thereof for this tower that they got to build, they began to say among themselves, what need hath my Lord of this tower? What need hath my Lord of this tower, seeing this is a time of peace? Sounds like they weren't taking the Old Testament very seriously when it says peace and safety, peace and safety, peace and safety. There is no peace. I come with a sword. I'm not coming to bring peace. I'm coming to divide, even mother from her mom, or even mother from daughter, father and son. I'll even divide families. That's how serious I am about dividing my people from all the other people. And so they start just barely they're just working on the foundation for the tower, and they go, do we really need to be doing this? Isn't this a time of peace? And it says, while they were at variance one with another, they became very slothful. While they were debating, like, I don't know, maybe there's something better we could be doing. Maybe this is a time of peace. Why do we need to build a tower and worry about enemies? And it says they became slothful, and they hearkened not unto the commandments of their Lord. So what happens? The enemy came by night, broke down the hedge, and the servants of the nobleman arose and were affrighted and fled. And the enemy destroyed their works and broke down the olive trees. They didn't do what God said. So God says, well, now the enemy enters. You were supposed to keep the enemy out. Now the enemy enters, conquers, and grabs the pleasant places and the precious things and enters the sanctuary. The ancient conspiracy, the devil's church, they gained control of it, and the servants of the noblemen, the people of God, the seed of Joseph, fled. No longer in that location because they didn't do what God said. So when the enemy came, they just ran. That's why it's the UN Peace Plaza, and there's not actually the seed of Joseph prospering in that specific location. The ancient conspiracy got control of it. And when you go there right now, they got control of it. And we're going to talk about this in the next video, the parable of the sower, the parable of the wheat and tares. Like God has done every time you don't keep his commandments, you get booted. But I'm going to bring you back and we're going to try again. And he says, I must gather together my people. This is a covenant. Like I can't break my covenant, so I got to bring you back again. And he says, I must gather my people together according to the parable of the wheat and the tares. We're going to lay out wheat and tares in the next video. Verse 66, the tares shall be bound in bundles, and their bands made strong, that they may be burned with unquenchable fire. It's referring to these wicked people that came and conquered and drove out God's people and now are sitting in secrecy, owning this location, although they put up their ensigns for signs. So if you pay attention, oh, this is the secret combination Peace and Safety Plaza. United Nations Peace Plaza. So let's read a little bit about this now. It's the only memorial in the world to those persons serving in the peacekeeping forces of the United Nations. What a slew of deceptive, scummy, ancient conspiracy words right there. It's the only memorial in the world to the peacekeeping forces of the United Nations on the Mormon temple lot? Unless this Mormon temple lot is actually a real thing. Unless this God's location, God's covenant people, God's special location is actually Missouri. Well, then maybe a secret combination United Nations would really have a really deep interest in this place. So much so that it's the only memorial in the world to the persons serving in the peacekeeping forces of the United Nations. Peacekeeping forces? The League to Enforce Peace? I hope you guys are seeing this right here. It's very obvious. I understand it's hard to accept, but read the scriptures. Like, it's telling the story over and over and over. We just read God say it in the Doctrine and Covenants. I told you to do this, you didn't listen, and the enemy came and overtook. And the enemy is peace and safety. And here's the peacekeeping forces of the secret nation combinations and their only memorial, and they call it the Peace Plaza. And there's a 12.5-foot statue named Girl with Dove. Not the stone woman, girl with dove. Not the girl flying God's eagle, girl with dove in a skimpy dress. And then if we look down here, it just keeps going and going and going. Just keep hanging with me here. On June 26, right here. Upon signing the United Nations Charter in San Francisco, California on June 26, 1945, so President Truman in 1945 in San Francisco, California, signs the United Nations Charter, signs the United States of America into the United Nations. The next day, he arrived in Independence, Missouri, and addressed a crowd of about 10,000 in this big dome building. What is this spot? President of the United States signs the United States into the UN, partners with the UN. Next order of business, Mormon temple lot, Independence, Missouri, center place of Zion. What is this place? Why are you guys concerned with this place? And why the second that you sign this country into the United Nations, now let's go to Independence, Missouri. This keeps going. Why, after the day of signing the United Nations Charter, does the USA president go to the New Jerusalem location? And why is there a sign? Let's read what their sign says. So right here you can see, here's this girl flying a dove standing on the firmament. And this sign right here is what we're going to take a look at. So it says right here, on June 27th, 1945, in the nearby Community of Christ Auditorium, the big stone gray building with the massive dome, President Truman formally announced that the United States was a signatory to the UN. The day after he signed, he's in that building going, we did it, we're part of the UN now. And then he says, history has bestowed on us a solemn responsibility. We failed to give a genuine peace. Talking about peace again, and they're saying they failed at what they call a genuine peace, an enforced peace. And then he says, we dare not fail this time. We must not repeat the blunders of the past. What are their blunders of the past? Well, their blunders of the past is letting the seed of Joseph return to the covenant location, letting God bring his people back to the covenant spot, letting Joseph Smith Jr. translate ancient seed of Joseph records, publish them to the world, and then take God's people back to the covenant location. We failed. That messed up our enforced peace. We can't do that again. We dare not fail this time. We must not repeat the blunders of the past. The United Combination Nations, secret, Gadianton, ancient conspiracy, Lucifer and Cain, great and abominable church organization, and the President of the United States. The Priestcraft order doing what they do. So in case it hasn't been clear enough yet, the United Nations is the ancient conspiracy, is secret combinations, is Lucifer and Cain's great and abominable church, is one of their main organizations, if not their main organization. That is in the public, because they rule with their secret courts and their secret ways behind the scenes, but they gotta have some stuff out in the open. And if you pay attention, United Nations Peace Plaza, great and abominable stuff happening. And the President of the United States, who's part of this Priestcraft order, signs the country into the United Nations garbage. And the second he does that, now I got to go to this dome building, the center place of Zion, the temple lot, the seed of Joseph location, and I got to talk about blunders of the past and enforcing peace. Matthew 10:34, think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. And if we look at one of my favorite buildings I showed you earlier, this is the the Los Angeles Times building in Los Angeles, California. And here we've got a man strapped with the armor of God, the eagle of God flying behind him, stabbing the serpent in the head with a sword. Because that is what God's about. He is going to divide, and always does divide, the wicked from the righteous, his people from the rest. And when these people, the United Nations and the presidents, all these peace and safety people, when they're talking about peace and safety, and they're signing us into the League to Enforce Peace, and going straight to these ancient Joseph of Egypt, Jacob, Israel covenant locations, they are the serpent. They are the conspiracy. They are Lucifer and Cain's church. Matthew 7:20, by their fruits ye shall know them. There's some serious fruit sitting on that temple lot in Independence, Missouri, called the UN Peace Plaza. The Peace and Safety Plaza in the seat of Joseph, seat of Jacob location. 3 Nephi 14:20, same thing in the Book of Mormon. By their fruits ye shall know them. And now when we learn a little bit more about this charter that the president signed the country into, it says the Charter of the United Nations is the foundational treaty of the United Nations. It establishes the purposes, governing structure, and overall framework of the UN system, including its 6 principal organs. Again, different things being combined, secret combinations combined for their secret purposes. But then we read even more about this, and it says that the charter entered into, it says there were 5 permanent members that joined the United Nations Security Council, they're calling it right here, through this charter. And when I read these, most of these, if not all, are supposed to be enemies to the United States of America. China, France, Soviet Union, United Kingdom. China is supposed to be our enemy. Soviet Union, communist enemy. United Kingdom, Great Britain Empire, that's supposed to be what we escaped from and we are independent of. But for some reason, we all joined up right here and signed into the United Nations. And then the president of the United States, right after that, goes to Independence, Missouri. Like, dude, this is like, if this whole Mormon thing, if the whole Bible thing, if this is all just silliness, if the real location's over there in the Middle East, what are y'all up to? What is all this then? So really what's going on is the ancient conspiracy, Lucifer and Cain's great and abominable church, is alive and well, thriving. The ancient covenant, God's people, the seed of Abraham, Jacob, and Joseph, are alive, but well deceived by the ancient conspiracy. We don't even know where we're at. We don't even know where the real locations are at. We think we've got all these vain and flattering and smooth words telling us we're free and prosperous. Lies. Ether 8:24. When ye shall see these things among you, awake to a sense of your awful situation because of this secret combination which shall be among you. It's among you. Wake up to it. Now let's move to Utah, because after the governor, the Priestcraft order said, kill him, kill the seed of Joseph, get him out of the correct location. They bounce around for a second, and then they go to Utah, which at that time was not part of the United States. It was Mexico. It was Mexican territory. And this is where we're going to now talk about Old Jerusalem, the original Jerusalem, the Jerusalem talked about in the Old Testament, the New Testament Jerusalem, where Jesus Christ was murdered. That's in Utah. That's not over here in the Middle East where the UN created a place called Israel. Like we see right here, history.state.gov, creation of Israel, 1948. 3 years after the President of the United States signed the United States into the United Nations, and then went to Independence, Missouri, seat of Joseph location, to announce it. 3 years after that, well, now here's a creation of a fake Israel in the Middle East. Creation of Israel, 1948. The UN created a place called Israel. That's that, not the real location. The real location is the UN Peace Plaza, the only memorial in the world for the peacekeeping forces of the United Nations. The only place, the only memorial in the world for the secret combination Lucifer and Cain's church. So I said we're going to clear up this old versus new Jerusalem. We're going to do that right here. It's actually very simple. So like I've talked about all throughout this presentation, the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Joseph, 2 separate locations, two different tribes in two different locations. And we also learned that they also have two different records that have been published to the world: tribe of Judah, Bible; tribe of Joseph, Book of Mormon. Tribe of Judah was promised the Jerusalem location. David and Solomon were promised that location for all of their seed. And Jacob, Joseph, Abraham, Lehi, Joseph Smith Jr. were promised the Joseph of Egypt location, which is the Jacob's Pillar location, which is Missouri, which is St. Luce, Bethel. So Old Jerusalem is just referring to the David, Solomon, tribe of Judah location. New Jerusalem is referring to the Jacob, Joseph, Joseph Smith, Lehi, Nephi, Bethel, Luce, Missouri location. In Ether 13:5, it says, God spake also concerning the house of Israel and the Jerusalem from whence Lehi should come. After it should be destroyed, it should be built up again, a holy city unto the Lord. So Old Jerusalem, the David, Solomon location, tribe of Judah location, where Lehi and Nephi escaped from, that's Old Jerusalem, and it was a holy city for the Lord. And it was a holy city unto the Lord. Not his holy city, not his throne location. He promised that location to David and Solomon in the tribe of Judah. A holy city for the Lord that was living the ways of the Lord, but not his ultimate spot. It's the David-Solomon spot. So it's saying, wherefore, it could not be a new Jerusalem because it had been in a time of old. So that is the Old Jerusalem, always going to be the Old Jerusalem. And that it's going to be built up again in the future and be a holy city of God again, just not his throne location. Ether 13:6 describes, Ether 13:6 says that the new Jerusalem shall be built upon this land, meaning the land where the Nephites are at, the Mississippi Valley, Israel Valley land. And that this new Jerusalem should be built up upon this land unto the remnant of the seed of Joseph. So the Mississippi Valley, St. Luce, Bethel, House of God, Missouri location, when all of that gets built up again and it's all the wicked people have been kicked out of there and God's actually there reigning on his throne, that will be called New Jerusalem. It's more just of a way of saying a holy city. There's the Old Jerusalem, which was a holy city for God, and that's the tribe of Judah location. But then the seed of Joseph location, when that is proper and living correctly and there's no wicked people there, New Jerusalem, new holy city. Ether 13:7, the Lord brought a remnant of the seed of Joseph out of the land of Jerusalem, that he might be merciful unto the seed of Joseph, that they should perish not. Brought them out of Old Jerusalem and brought them to the Bethel Luce location, Mississippi Valley, Israel Valley, which is what is also referred to as the New Jerusalem location. Ether 13:8, the remnant of the house of Joseph shall be upon this land, and it shall be a land of their inheritance, and they shall build up a holy city unto the Lord, like unto the Jerusalem of old. So that's why it's New Jerusalem. There's the old one, and they're going to build one up in the Joseph spot, the Mississippi Valley, the Missouri spot, and that's going to be like unto the Jerusalem of old, but it's not the Jerusalem of old, so it's going to be called the New Jerusalem. And it's saying very clearly that the house of Joseph shall be upon this land. It's their spot. The house of Joseph, the seed of Joseph, the seed of Jacob, the Missouri location, that's their spot. So just to recap, New Jerusalem is the Jacob, Joseph, Lehi, Joseph Smith location, seed of Joseph, seed of Jacob location, which is Missouri. Old Jerusalem is the Judah, tribe of Judah, the David and Solomon location. Both of them in the future will both be built up as holy places for God. But God will rule out of his Missouri location, and David and Solomon will rule out of the Judah, Jerusalem location. So New Jerusalem is Missouri. Old Jerusalem is Utah, because the Israel in the Middle East is a creation of the United Nations. Remember Joe Biden saying, if there were not an Israel, we'd have to go out and invent an Israel. They invented in Israel. That's what all that is over there. And here's a few more verses from the New Testament speaking about New Jerusalem, the Missouri location. And John right here, John the Beloved, says he saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. In the next video, we'll talk about this bride adorned for her husband, the stone woman. Revelation 21:10, that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God. Her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. Had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, 12 tribes of Israel. And at the gates 12 angels, and names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the name of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And he that talked with me had a golden reed to measure the city, and the gates thereof, and the wall thereof. The building of the wall of it was of jasper, and the city was pure gold, like unto clear glass. The foundations of the wall of the city were garnished with all manner of precious stones. Absolute, super advanced, precious stone masonry. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third chalcedony, the fourth emerald. The 12 gates were 12 pearls. Every several gate was of one pearl. The street of the city was pure gold, as it were transparent glass. I saw no temple therein, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple of it. The Lamb is the light thereof, because he is the light and life of the world. It says the city will have no need of the sun, neither of the moon, because God will light it. He is the light and life of the world. There shall in no wise enter into it anything that defileth it, neither whatsoever worketh abomination or maketh a lie. There will be, when that location is fully set up as God's throne, no wicked will enter, not even the tiniest bit. So now let's really break down Old Jerusalem, which is Utah, which means we're also going to take a look at some of the ancient cities of Judah. Real quick before we do that, let's just remind ourselves of some of the descriptions that the Old Testament gives of Old Jerusalem, the city of David, the King Solomon's temple location. It says it's the stronghold of Zion, the city of David. David dwelt in the fort, calls it a fort, talks about cedar trees, carpenters, masons. David built a house, so, expert masonry. City of David, wall of Jerusalem round about, so there's a wall round about it. Castle of Zion, city of David, dwelt in a castle, city of David. Fenced cities, like walled fenced cities of Judah. Riches and honor and abundance, like we remember when we read all of King Solomon's temple and all the materials that he had, like really rich, advanced, precious stone, abundance of marble, all sorts of other types of stone, gold, silver, copper, brass, iron, all that stuff. High places and groves, castles, cities of store, much business in the cities of Judah. Men of war, mighty men of valor were in Jerusalem. There were towers built in Jerusalem. Talks about a corner gate, a valley gate, a wall, and it's all fortified, super heavy stone. Built towers in the desert. Also talks about plains and mountains. Talks about engines in Jerusalem, invented by cunning men. Talks about towers and bulwarks. Talks about fountain, doors, locks, bars, walls of the pool, king's garden, the stairs that go down from the city of David. Jerusalem builded as a city that is compact together. Mountains are round about Jerusalem. Mountains, pyramids surrounding Jerusalem. Talks about the gates of Jerusalem and the palaces of Jerusalem. And then it also talks about how all that gets turned into a desolate wasteland. These cities are left desolate, they are laid waste, and the rivers are dried up. Talked about this all in the previous videos. And oftentimes these old, ancient pyramid, stone castle cities are nowadays called national parks. It's this, no, come explore the 300 billion years of what Mother Nature built. When really the ancient conspiracy is saying, we're lying to you, this is actually ancient architecture. These are the Bible cities, but come check out the national parks that Mother Nature built 300 billion years ago. And if Utah is these ancient locations, is the cities of Judah, then there should be some desolate, wasted stone castles and stone pyramids and palaces and all of that. Because Judges 1:8 Jerusalem, city got set on fire. Isaiah 6:11, cities wasted without inhabitant, houses without man, land utterly desolate. And it's interesting because I've also heard other people that like know nothing about Utah. Like I've listened to one guy specifically who's pretty popular for homesteading and helping people find like locations that are good locations to, do off-grid homesteading, that sort of a thing. And it's funny because when he describes Utah, he describes it exactly, his exact words, a wasteland. That's what it is. It's ancient stone cities laid waste. The rivers, the waters have been dried up. It's a desert, desolate wasteland of ancient cities. Jerusalem, cities of Judah, I will raise up the decayed places thereof. So right here saying that there are decayed places in those locations that eventually in the future will be built up again. Like we just read about, Old Jerusalem, New Jerusalem, both of those will be built up again. Isaiah 61:4, build the old wastes, raise up the former desolations, repair the waste cities, desolations of many generations. So this location has just a bunch of wasted, desolate cities. Make thy land desolate, cities shall be laid waste. Viewed the walls of Jerusalem broken down, gates thereof were consumed with fire. Raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, close up the breaches. I will raise up his ruins, build it as in the days of old. So that there in Amos is giving us a reference to it being rebuilt kind of towards the end days, like it was in days of old. Zion for your sake shall be plowed as a field. Jerusalem shall become heaps. The mountain of the house as the high places of the forest. So it's a couple things here. Jerusalem turned into heaps, ancient stone cities, heaps of stone. But then it also refers to the place as a mountain of the house, which we're going to see in just a second some more. It also prophesies, we just read a couple of them that kind of hinted at it, but it talks about this location in the last days. And it says, in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord, like we just read in Micah 3:12, talking about Jerusalem, that mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow into it. So it's saying in the last days that location is going to be built up, and people shall flow unto it. We're going to look at this more in just a second. Micah 4:2 also says that in the last days the word of the Lord will go out from Jerusalem. Like the word of the Lord will be preached, sent forth from Jerusalem. Okay, and what do we see in Utah? There is this thing called the Missionary Training Center, or the MTC, which is part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Utah Church. And the Missionary Training Center is these guys, the missionaries that roll around in white shirts and ties. Okay, they are the most worldwide force that carries the Judah writings, the Bible, and the Joseph writings, the Book of Mormon, to the entire world. And I don't think anybody watching this video is going to I don't think that surprises anyone. I think everybody is very aware of what these guys in white shirts and ties do. Now, some people have, theories of like them being spies and stuff, but really it's not that. Like it's just a bunch of kids that are a part of this religion that take the Bible and the Book of Mormon and they go start to preach to people all over the world. They are the biggest force for preaching the Word of God in the whole world, by far. And they do both the Joseph writings, the Book of Mormon, and the Judah writings, the Bible. Go up to them, talk to them, ask them for a free book, Bible and or Book of Mormon. Here you go, you can have it. Can we come talk to you about it? That's what they do. These guys for 2 years, and also there's girls that go out and do the same thing. But at a young age, they take those books and they go to all different places of the world and they preach about Jesus Christ. And I'll tell more about Mormon missionaries in a second, but now let's look at some desolate cities in Utah. So here's Silver City. I've showed you this one before, where just ancient stone architecture sitting in ruin. It continues up. All these mountains out here are just more of this, but covered in dirt and shrubbery. And you can see this is 100% that. It's going into the mountain. It is the mountain. Here's another look. I'm standing on the Great Salt Lake, except it's quite dried up now. We'll talk more about that in a second. But you can see all these ancient pyramids right here, just sitting in ruin. And we'll talk about this tower out here in just a second also. Bryce Canyon, ancient stone architecture, sitting in ruin. in the desert because the waters have been dried up. Capitol Reef, Utah. Here's an old castle sitting in ruin, and what do they call it? They call it the castle because that's actually what it is. Down by like St. George, Utah, more ancient castles sitting right here. You can see the old spires right there. That's exactly what they are. This isn't 300 billion years of tectonic plates slowly drifting and poking stuff up out of the earth, and then boom, here's these things that look exactly like ancient castles sitting in ruin. Now real quickly, let's talk about the Great Salt Lake, or the Dead Salt Sea. Learn more about that. But you'll see here we have pyramids, ancient stone pyramids covered in dirt, sitting on the Great Salt Lake or the Dead Salt Sea. And then you also have this interesting marker right here where the two locations it's taking you to is that Independence, Missouri location, which is over 1,000 miles away from here. And then it's also pointing you towards Sacramento, California, which is where the California Capitol building is at, and Sacramento means sacred. So it's pointing you here to two sacred sites, one in Independence, Missouri, and then another one in California. The Great Salt Lake is the largest saltwater lake in the Western Hemisphere. It is a remnant of Lake Bonneville, a prehistoric body of water that covered much of western Utah. Talk more about Lake Bonneville in just a second. It says, since the lake has no outlets besides evaporation, these minerals accumulate and give the lake high salinity, far saltier than seawater, and density. This density causes swimming in the lake to feel similar to floating. So it's very, very, very salty water. This lake has been called America's Dead Sea. So it's drawing a comparison with this Middle East location, which is a hoax location. That's not the real place. Utah is actually the real place, but it's acting as if that's the real place over there and comparing things to over there. Like the Dead Sea, that exists in the Middle East. Well, the real Dead Sea is the Great Salt Lake, which is a dead salt sea. And here you can read about the West Desert Pumping Project, where they drained a huge chunk of the Great Salt Lake. In total, the pumps removed 2.7 million acre feet of water while they operated. Huge drain the lake operation. But then what's funny is right below, right here, so like right here, it gives you the West Desert Pumping Project, which is this huge government Priestcraft approved project where they just empty a ton of the Great Salt Lake. And then they go, shrinking. Oh, it's because drought conditions, climate change, and the overuse of snowmelt have caused the Great Salt Lake to shrink. It's like, yeah, but you just told us all about your pumping project where you guys drained it all. And then you're trying to blame it on your current stories that you're going with, yeah, climate change and all that nonsense. Okay, now let's watch this video. And this is gonna be, I'll just be very clear up front so you can kind of analyze the video this way. This is mockery, this is lie, this is deception, this is, they know the real location and they know the false location is a false location, and they're being funny and deceptive about it. They're mocking the real location.
While in Israel recently, he was thinking all about the locations here in Utah that are named after places in the Holy Land. So he visited those sites and tells us that a couple of them even look like Utah. Craig Work takes us to the original Moab, the Jordan River, Mount Nebo, and even the Jericho sand dunes. It's today's Worth Watching.
This is the southern Utah we all know and love. Well, except for some 2,000-year-old Roman ruins. It is actually Israel. And that range lining the Dead Sea in Jordan is Moab. There is no doubt that this is Moab. Now, up on top of that range is Mount Nebo. Well, not exactly the Mount Nebo of Juab and Utah counties, but one of the number of Utah places named after biblical locations.
What happened was these steps took you to the top of a flat walkway.
There is a scholar who knows them all and their Utah counterparts. The Reverend Canon Mary June Nestler has been an archaeologist and teacher throughout the Holy Land for decades.
I want you to find the city wall. That's a 4th century wall.
She now lives in Jerusalem as the course director of the prestigious St. George's College in Israel. Prior to this work, she lived in Utah for a decade.
My goodness, Israel looks so much like parts of Utah. Sometimes I'll look up and wonder where I am.
Of course, you will find the 156-mile-long River Jordan in the Holy Land, and it is surprisingly about the size of the Jordan River in Salt Lake County. And like the Utah counterpart, people have lived along its banks for thousands of years. And how about the Jericho sand dunes of Utah? Well, this is Jericho, and these are the dunes of the Judea Desert. Now, the dunes aren't quite as sandy as in Utah, more rocky, but you can see that they were well named in Utah. And besides, it is here that you find the original 4x4 of the desert dunes. No, this is not a fun ride. Not at all. There is no good way on or off. Now, Canon Nestler says you'll find hundreds of locations in America named after biblical places, not just because they look like their counterparts, but because religious people honor those places with the new locations in America.
They had no idea, in most cases, what the actual biblical places looked like, but they were dear to them, dear in their hearts, and when they founded places and they needed to name a river, they needed to name a town, they naturally looked to the scriptures for inspiration.
But whether pioneers saw these places or were just inspired by the accounts in the Bible, Utah is pretty close to much of the land. For example, I just thought that this canyon looked like the land outside of Price.
Well, it's a lot of fun because when I'm riding around and I see the name of a place that I know from Utah and I know I'm halfway around the world, it jogs my memory of good things.
Oh, and of course there is the Dead Sea. Now you can't help but think of the Great Salt Lake, and why isn't our Salt Lake really named after the Dead Sea? Well, actually, it does have the same name as the body of water when you look at the literal translation of the name in Hebrew.
Yam HaMelach in Hebrew is the Salt Sea. So Utah has a great salt lake, and Israel and Jordan have a great salt lake.
But in Hebrew, it has pretty much the same name.
Exactly the same name.
And there is the same issue when one floats like a cork in this water. You usually do it only once. But again, it's interesting to see Utah is a lot like the Holy Land in topography, well, except for the Roman roads. Well, do you see Utah here? Okay, in your imagination. Craigworth, news for Utah at the Dead Sea.
This is one of the most masterfully crafted pieces of deceptive content that I think exists. It's super, super, super thick with mockery. It's heavily, heavily, heavily mingled with truth and lie, truth and deception. The truth is Utah and all the things that seem like Israel is the real stuff. And they've got this fake Middle East thing going on that got set up that is just pure lies and deceptions. And then you have the ABC4 trusted news channels, trusted professors lying, deceiving, saying this looks like this looks like this. Only in your imagination. The Great Salt Lake, the Dead Sea, in Utah or over there, they have the same name in Hebrew. Which one's the real one? The Jericho sand dunes, much sandier in Utah, but the real ones are over here. And one of the main things about whichever location is the real location is there's a dead salt sea, and there's a freshwater sea, and there's a river running that is connecting the two. And that's called the Jordan River. Talk more about that in just a second. But this video right here is masterful deception, and it shows you from very high positions is where the deception is coming from. And that's really the only way it can occur, guys. It has to come from the top. Like, they're the only ones who really have enough control and power and sway to lie like this. Now, with that said, like this lady right here, she's just reading off a teleprompter. She shows up to work every day, there's these words on the screen, and she just reads them. But some of these people in this video, they know they're lying, they know they're deceiving, they know one location's the real one and the other's the fake one, and they're telling you the fake one's the real one and telling you the real one is the fake one. This is Lucifer and Cain's great and abominable church turning things upside down, reversing the truth, good for evil, evil for good, bitter for sweet, sweet for bitter. Turn it upside down, reverse it, tell it to him backwards. And then the guy goes, don't they both have the same name in Hebrew? Yeah, they do have both the same name in Hebrew. What a coincidence. One's a deception and one's the truth. Take your pick. The UN creation of Israel in the Middle East, or the real location, which is Utah, which has much stronger markers and a much more perfect match for what the scriptures have to say about the old Jerusalem location. I'll show you more of that right now. Let's talk about the name Utah, which comes from the Western Apache language, Yuda, which, man, is that real close to Judah. One letter change, a Y and a J. Yuda, Judah. Yuda, Judah, Judah, Yuda, Judah. And then it also says the Spanish used the word Yuda to refer to the Ute people of the region. And then we get another definition right here where it says Spanish missionaries referred to Nush bands as Yudas. But the basis for the name remains unclear. Yeah, because you don't really want to tell where that name actually comes from, because if you do, now we're talking tribe of Judah. Can it mention previously Lake Bonneville? Which basically is just this right here. It's saying that there used to be a lot more water in this area, and all that water used to be called, they give it the name Lake Bonneville, and that all that water is mostly gone now, and you're left with the Dead Sea, the Great Salt Lake, Utah Lake, the Sea of Galilee, the fresh water, and then the Jordan River that runs in between them. But I think this Lake Bonneville thing makes for an interesting take on things, so let's just kind of evaluate it for a second. So over here we've got the Great Salt Lake, and then that's just a remnant of what used to be a much greater Lake Bonneville. And you can see that that takes up most of western Utah, but that some of its water also comes into Nevada and bordering California, that type of a thing. And then also as part of that is the Great Basin, which is very similar to like Lake Bonneville, but a basin usually holds water. So if you potentially picture this whole basin area as water, then it kind of puts some water in some places that, I think could definitely make sense. And a lot of Utah is just been dried up, like we've been talking about in the ancient conspiracy. Dries up water, leaves places desolate, wasted, as a desert. And so I think it's possible that this Great Basin could very much have been water, and there just used to be a lot more water in these areas a while ago. So right here it says that the Great Basin includes most of Nevada, half of Utah, and like most of Nevada is just straight desert. So if there was water there previously that got dried up, that makes a lot of sense. Also half of Utah, substantial parts of Oregon and California, and small areas of Idaho, Wyoming, and Baja California, Mexico. The Great Salt Lake, Pyramid Lake, the Humboldt Sink are a few of the drains in the Great Basin. But what really makes this interesting, if we do put this water back into place, if there really was water here before, is now there's potentially a Red Sea thing happening. I talked to you previously about Moses standing on Mount Nebo, which is in Utah overlooking Missouri, the Promised Land, and Mount Nebo is in the land of Moab, all just Utah locations. But then that means their escape from Egypt to the wilderness and then over to the Promised Land, there'd have to be, the Red Sea, some water that they would have had to cross. And this happens to be the case, that this is also a match right here. So the Gulf of California is also known as the Sea of Cortez, or less commonly as the Vermilion Sea or Mar Bermejo, which vermilion means red and Bermejo means red. So the Gulf of California is also known as the Red Sea. Right here, definition of vermilion, a brilliant red color. And some people will say these maps are fake, and personally I do think it's very easy to create fake maps. Like, it's just drawing and making illustrations. But also this whole Lake Bonneville thing, and maybe there used to be a lot of water here, and if that's the case, and the Baja California is the Vermilion Sea, the Red Sea, and then right here on some really old maps it depicts right here this Mar Vermejo or Mer Rouge Again, all saying Red Sea in different languages. And then over here you have the Isle of California, which puts Utah right about in this territory where you see all these pyramids depicted. And then over here is where you would see the Promised Land, the covenant location, Missouri. Here's another look at another map showing the same thing, where you have California. Over here is an island. You've got the Mar Vermejo, the Red Sea, and then you've got this Utah location, which used to be Mexico territory. And then over here, you've got the Missouri, the Mississippi Valley location. So this Red Sea right here would have been where Moses and the Israelites crossed, and they came to this area right here, this land of Moab area, stood on Mount Nebo and overlooked the Promised Land over here. And right where that Red Sea water is, and crossing that, is the place that they call Death Valley. You can kind of see it outlined right here, more or less. They call that Death Valley, which if we're looking at these maps right here, and they crossed when this was water, the Red Sea, somewhere in that area, and now it's been dried up and it's just land, well, maybe Death Valley and the Red Sea right there is referring to the armies of Pharaoh dying right there, being drowned when the sea fell back on them. So this is a very crude map that I put together, but I think it illustrates this quite well. And interestingly, it all matches perfectly. So you got, here's the covenant location, Luz, Bethel. This is the Jacob, Joseph, Lehi spot. This is the UN Peace Plaza spot. You got the mighty Mississippi River right there. Then up over here, you've got Hill Cumorah in Palmyra, New York, where Joseph Smith found those ancient Nephite records, the gold plates. And then right here, you've got Utah, which is the Jerusalem, David, Solomon, tribe of Judah location. Also the Jesus Christ murdered location. Also the Jesus Christ location where he was murdered. And then right here, you've got the Red Sea, and then over here, California, or what would be Egypt. And California has a ton of pyramids, and they have Pyramid Lake. Like, there's a lot of pyramid architecture over here. And there was no Mexican-United States border way back then. So the pyramids that are just a little bit more down south here, to say they weren't up here also, I think is very much inaccurate. And so you can very much say the pyramids that are a little bit more down south in Mexico are also right up here, because also these sections were also used to be Mexico territory. They weren't this United States thing. So if there was more water in these locations, and California used to kind of be over here its own little thing, and you follow in the scriptures where it says these are the directions they headed when they went places, whether that's Moses heading to the Promised Land in the directions that they went, or Lehi and Nephi heading to the Promised Land in the directions that they went, it matches. And so you got Egypt over here. Moses escapes through the Red Sea, and they come over here to the land of Moab. And then from there, they go over to the Promised Covenant location. Then you also have Nephi and Lehi living right here in Jerusalem, and they escape, and they go over here to the Promised Covenant location, and they spread out and they fill up this whole valley. Ancient records get deposited into the Hill Cumorah. Joseph Smith is living in New York. Angel Moroni says, here's where to go grab the records, translates them. Book of Mormon, God says, go to the covenant location, Missouri, because you're the seed of Joseph, you're the seed of Jacob. They get there, the ancient conspiracy, United Nations goes, kill them. This is our peace plaza, peace and safety, everybody. And meanwhile, the whole Middle East thing is set up so that we don't look at this area, these lands, and see it for what it actually is, because there's this yapping and yapping and yapping and yapping saying it's all over here, it's all over here, it's all over here, when it's not. There's a bunch of lies and deception over there. If you pay attention and you take the scriptures and you take them for what they're actually saying, and you look at the markers in the land, this seems to be very accurate. What is now called the United States of America comprises Old Egypt, Old Jerusalem, and the promised covenant location promised to Abraham, Jacob, Joseph of Egypt, Lehi, Joseph Smith Jr., and the seed of Abraham, Jacob, and Joseph for forever, and also the tribe of Judah location promised to David and King Solomon, which is also the Jesus Christ murder location. All what is now called the United States of America, which signed into the United Nations, which is the secret combining of things. And right when they did that, boom, here's where the president has to go. Independence, Missouri, into that huge dome stone building and make that announcement. Is this Mormon thing silly? Is this seed of Joseph, seed of Jacob, ancient Abraham promise? Is this all nonsense? Or is there something going on here? We're being heavily deceived, but actually all the markers, all the signs, all the stone buildings, all the pyramids, all the palaces, it's still a lot of it sitting here screaming at us. This is the promised land. This is the covenant location. The tribe of Judah location is Utah. The tribe of Joseph location is Missouri. Now let's look at Utah Lake, the Sea of Galilee, because like I said, there's supposed to be this in the actual location, a dead salt sea, and there's also supposed to be a freshwater sea and then a river running between them, which is the River of Jordan. And this is very, very unique geography, where there's a fresh sea and a saltwater sea and they're connected. A couple places in the world for that. One of them is the real one of them is the fake one. So if it's Utah, the Great Salt Lake is the Dead Salt Sea, and then there's a Jordan River that also connects to a freshwater lake which exists in Utah, and that freshwater lake is called Utah Lake, which is actually the Sea of Galilee. So here's a look at Utah Lake, which is a freshwater lake which has the Jordan River running out of it that connects to the Dead Salt Sea, the Great Salt Lake. This is actually the Sea of Galilee, and it's surrounded by huge mountains. This is much more of a match for the Old Jerusalem described in the Old Testament and New Testament than the hoax location in the Middle East. Utah Lake is a freshwater lake in the center of Utah County. The lake's only river outlet, the Jordan River, is a tributary of the Great Salt Lake. Here's a look at me on top of one of these mountains, these mounts called Mount Timpanogos. This is old ancient pyramid architecture. And down here is the Sea of Galilee, the freshwater lake, which is now called Utah Lake. And if you look at this ancient stone masonry right here, it's pretty impressive. You can even still make out how it's blocks of stone. I understand it sounds a bit much. Seems pretty big. But isn't that how the scriptures describe King Solomon's architecture? Castle of Zion, fortress of Zion, mountains surrounding Jerusalem, huge walls, pyramids. It's all a match. Here's a look at, I'm standing on Utah Lake right now, standing on the Sea of Galilee. And I'll give you a pan to the left and then to the right. And you'll see it's just huge mountains, huge pyramids, huge walls surrounding these areas. And you have an exact match of a freshwater lake with a river running out of it, feeding into a dead salt sea. So now let's take a look at the Jordan River and the Jordan Valley, because there's the river and then the rivers create a valley. So there's also the Jordan Valley. So I was just standing right over here on the other side of this bush where I was taking that video where I panned it back and forth. This right here is the Jordan River flowing out of the Sea of Galilee or Utah Lake. And now here's a look at it flowing up north towards the Great Salt Lake. And you can see right here more pyramids in the background. And this is actually Geneva Mining. This is a mining company called Geneva Rock. Talk more about them in just a second. The Jordan River flows northward through the Salt Lake Valley and empties into the Great Salt Lake. More than 1 million people live in the Jordan sub-basin. And then it says that the settlers who found this river, and they hadn't named it yet, but they noticed that it drained Utah Lake into the Great Salt Lake and noted that it was remarkably similar to the way the River Jordan, located in the Middle East, drains the Sea of Galilee into the Dead Sea. Which one is it? Which one's the real one? Because they're saying they're very, very similar over and over and over again. And the excuse is always, yeah, they're just religious people, so they decided to give it the same name. Or is there an ancient conspiracy? Is there Lucifer and Cain's church that is master at deception? And all they do is lie, 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 lie. And we're going to talk more about Kennecott in a second, but this, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but this is where you just learn that these mining companies, which I'm going to touch on in just a second, get a bunch of money from the federal government to clean up the river. Like I've said, they use the words cleanup, conservation, preservation, renewal, whatever type of silly words that they use to lie, when what they're actually doing is destructive. They're pillaging, they're demolishing, they're robbing, stealing, plundering, killing. It's a site listed with the Superfund program. Federal dollars are available for cleanup. Matthew 3:13 says, Jesus from Galilee to Jordan unto John to be baptized of him. So if this is that spot, then this is where Jesus Christ was baptized. And if you look right here, on our right is the Geneva mining operation that's mining all those pyramids right here. This water that you see is part of the Jordan River flowing up towards Salt Lake. And here's a sign. And what's on the sign? The river brought joy through baptisms. Because this is where John the Baptist baptized, and this is where he baptized God, Jesus Christ. Mark 1:5, all baptized of him in the river of Jordan. Numbers 34:12, Jordan, and the goings out of it shall be at the Salt Sea. The river of Jordan goes out at the Salt Sea. Exact match in Utah. And all this geography, by the way, in this exact match is impossible. And it's a way better match, a much bigger, grander match than the Middle East stuff. Lucky for them, they've got somewhat of a little match going on over there, and they can kind of pull, they've been pulling off that deception. But if you look at Utah for what it actually is, this geography and its matching over and over and over again is bonkers. But it's not. It's just true. And I'm going to show you what I think is an even stronger argument than the Dead Salt Sea, the Jordan River, the freshwater Utah Lake, Sea of Galilee, the Jericho sand dunes, Mount Nebo, land of Moab, ancient castles, ancient pyramids, dried up deserts. Even more than all that insane geography that's a perfect match, I'm going to give you a couple more things that are like, that's even more impressive of a match and is even more telling about what's actually going on. So here's a look at the Great Salt Lake. And like we read, it's been very drained. They've dried it up a lot, so it's not as big as it should be, not as deep as it should be. Like I should be standing on water right now, but I'm not. But this is the Great Salt Lake. The Jordan River drains into what we see right here. And then you also see pyramids right here sitting on the lake, and this huge tower we'll talk about in just a second, which is a mining operation tower. So Utah, you have a Mount Nebo. That's where Moses stood and looked at Missouri, the promised land. You've got a Sea of Galilee, which is Utah Lake. You've got a river of Jordan, which is called the Jordan River. And you've got a Dead Salt Sea, which is the Great Salt Lake. Exact same name when you go back to the original Hebrew word for it. And all of this surrounded by big mountains or pyramids. Walls of Jerusalem, mountains of Jerusalem. Kind of an exact match right here. Let's talk a little bit about Moab, Utah, the land of Moab, where the Israelites on their way to the promised land spent a good chunk of time. And so this is a very common picture of Moab. Has a lot of natural arches, as they call it. It says it has the highest density of natural arches in the world. Mother Nature doesn't build arches. Ancient masons build huge stone arches, and they sit in ruin nowadays. Here's another look at Moab, Utah. Like, does this look like a wall that Mother Nature built? Or does this look like a wall that an ancient stone masonry civilization would build? This looks exactly like a man-made wall, big one, sitting in ruin. Another one in Moab, Utah. I've shown you this one in a previous video. Huge castle right here, all out of stone, and you can see some of the triangle type architecture still sitting on it, as you can see right there. Still nicely intact. You can make out the terracing, you can make out the straight lines of stone. It's just all sitting in ruin now. And this triangle type shape right here, we still see it in a lot of stone architecture that is intact, like this. And then even right here, this is in Moab. They still show that in some buildings right here, they still show that same shape. If you pay attention, it's these same shapes out here in the mountains, which are just old pyramids and castles. And they also call this valley Castle Valley because that's actually what this is. This is all just old castle architecture poking up right here. And if you look at it that way, it's actually pretty obvious. The only time it's hard to not see it is if you believe the lies that were told. Sign for Castle Valley Inn right here, showing the castle, its towers, its walls in the background. And then you have Juab County, Utah. Interesting name, Juab. We got Judah, Utes, Judah, Juab. All these names, they kind of sound quite similar. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Jericho and Mount Nebo. Not really talk much about it, I'm just going to show you right here, but just some scriptures to remind us. In the plains of Moab, on the other side of Jordan, by Jericho, eastward. So there's Moab, and then there's a Jordan separating it, and Jericho's on the other side. Plains of Moab, unto the mountain of Nebo. So there's Nebo in Moab, and it's over against Jericho. So here's Mount Nebo. Showed you this image previously. This is where Moses stood and overlooked the promised land. Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab. And so here's Mount Nebo, where Moses stood. And this is the Moab National Park. So the land of Moab can be a much bigger area than this. And if you just look at the rock formation right here, where it's all kind of like dried up and red, that extends at least right here. I don't think it's far-fetched at all to say back then Mount Nebo was within the land of Moab. It says Mount Nebo is the southernmost and highest mountain in the Wasatch Range. That'd be the mountain that'd give you the most visibility to look over the promised land. It is named after the biblical Mount Nebo in Jordan, overlooking Israel. Really? It's named after that, or it is that, and the stuff over there has been named that since the UN decided they needed to create a hoax location, because if there wasn't in Israel, we'd have to invent one. I've said this 5,000 times in my 40-year career working for the Priestcraft ancient conspiracy. President Joe Biden. All the presidents. Okay, down here, I have marked Mount Nebo, and then right here, I have marked Jericho. Very short distance. And as described in that previous scripture, it says that Jericho is on the other side of Jordan. Well, the Jordan River runs right here out of Utah Lake up to the Great Salt Lake right here. I don't know about it running down south right here, but like that's, again, not a far stretch. Maybe there's more water here. Again, like that's real close match. We got Nebo right here, that's over against Jericho, and then it mentions Jordan kind of separating them, and man, the Jordan River real close to doing that right here. Very much could have been the case. And it says Jericho was so named on account of its desolate, isolated, sandy surroundings, because this is the actual location where these lands were left desolate and wasted. Desolate wastelands. The Little Sahara Recreation Area is a large area of sand dunes, hills, and sagebrush flats located in the northeast corner of the Sevier Desert in Juab County. And here's a look at it. Sand dunes, pyramids. Sand dunes, pyramids. Perfect match. Way better match than over there in the Middle East. They even said so in that ABC News video. Oh yeah, the Utah ones are just, they're much sandier. But over here in the Middle East, we had to pick something to call Jericho, so we picked a rocky location that's not really sandy, but hey, we're making it work. Meanwhile, there's a super sandy one in Juab County in Utah, right by Mount Nebo in the land of Moab, with a freshwater lake, Sea of Galilee, with a river running out of it, River of Jordan, up to the Great Salt Lake, the Dead Sea, which has the exact same name in Hebrew. And then let's just make the mockery even thicker, why don't we? There's a rebuilt Jerusalem temple in these same locations we're talking about. Real close to Jericho, real close to Mount Nebo, real close to Utah Lake, the Sea of Galilee. Not real close, in that exact location. And they call it a mini Hollywood. And if you know what Hollywood is, it's garbage. It's pure satanic, evil, witchcraft, deception. And this is going to make some of you definitely mad, because this is where The Chosen has filmed a lot of their stuff. And I will absolutely say The Chosen is deceptive. Once again, it's imagery depicting poor dirt rag people. It's showing a little bit of stone architecture, but where's all the beautiful colors? Where's all the precious gems? Where's all the super fine clothing? Where's the engines that were invented by cunning men in Jerusalem? Where's all that stuff? A new movie set to help portray the life of Jesus Christ, a 3-acre replica of ancient Jerusalem. in the middle of rural countryside in Utah. New York Times calls it a mini Hollywood. New York Times says lights, camera, prayer, a mini Hollywood in Utah. Mormons building Little Jerusalem in rural Utah. And why that location? Well, so they could film from any angle with the almost Galilean hills in the background. Almost? Or are these the Galilean hills that sit on the Utah Lake, which is the freshwater lake, which is the Sea of Galilee, with the Jordan River flowing out of it? I mean, this is all so much of a perfect match, guys. Like, it's actually insane. So down here is where the little Jerusalem, little Hollywood, Jerusalem replica temple set is at. It's right where I was just showing you Jericho and Mount Nebo. Here's Utah Lake. Jordan River runs out of Utah Lake, goes right up here to the Great Salt Lake. And there's mountains, pyramids surrounding all of this, the Galilean hills. The property includes desert, similar to the Judean plains, sand dunes, a river that ideally resembles the ancient River Jordan. They picked the area. They're filming that area and showing it to the world. They're very deceptive. They're very scummy and slimy and masterful at what they do. Masters of deception. Plop you down in that location. They show you that location. They rebuild the temple in that location. And they film it and send it to the world. And they go, hee ha, ha 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 ha. Poor dirt rag people. Real locations in the Middle East. But we're showing you the real one. So here's a video I took. These right here are the Galilean hills they're talking about. I'll pan this around and then I'll zoom in on the temple, Jerusalem, mini Hollywood location. And you can see right here, I mean, you're already seeing, here's some terracing for these pyramids right here. Like, it's just, these pyramids are covered in dirt. And you can't go take a tour of this temple set location. Like, it's locked down, cameras everywhere. You got to have special invites and get through their like security protocols to actually get in there. That's it right there. But I'm going to keep panning it around, and then I'll come back and zoom into it because I want to show you the almost Galilean hills that surround it. They're not almost, these are the Galilean hills. Okay, now I swing it back and I zoom in, and that's the Jerusalem mini Hollywood set right there. And then here's just a better look at some of these Galilean hills right here, where you can easily make out the terracing right there. I mean, look at that. That's just so obviously pyramid architecture right there. Here's another look at some. You can make out clearly pyramid shapes right here, more of the terracing that you can make out right there, and then some much bigger pyramids even behind it. So if we put this all on a map now, we've got the land. Well, this is Moab National Park marked right here. Not the whole land of Moab, but there's the national park marked right there, and all this is the land of Moab. Purple one right here, you got Mount Nebo. Green one right here, you've got the Jericho sand dunes. The blue one right here is the Jerusalem temple set that I showed you right here. Yellow is the Sea of Galilee, Utah Lake. The more orange one right here is the Jordan River, the River of Jordan that flows up to this green marker right here, which is the Great Salt Lake, the Dead Sea, exact same name in Hebrew. And so I've said this already, but what we're looking at is, this is the great and abominable churches. This is Lucifer and Cain's turning of things upside down, calling the real thing the fake thing and the fake thing the real thing. And they seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord. Their works are in the dark, and they say, who sees us? Who knows us? Look at how masterfully deceptive we are. They're in the location. We're filming in the location. We told them it's over here, so they have no idea. Now let's look at the Utah mines, because if this is that area, well, wouldn't there be a lot of precious stuff that you'd want to come pillage and grab? Like the other people previously came and pillaged and grabbed everything out of Jerusalem and carried it away. Wouldn't you want to do that if this is that location? And guess what? These pyramids, these mountains are heavily mined in Utah. And it all gets sent away to Great Britain. It gets sent away to the banking families. I haven't really talked about the banking families and the banks, but they're the ones controlling stuff with money. They're part of the Priestcraft order. So let's talk about Kennecott mining. Here's what it looks like. Pretty ridiculous, pretty obvious, and they're just straight gutting it and have been gutting these mountains for hundreds of years already. And they just keep going, and everybody's living in Utah not even thinking about it. The Bingham Canyon Mine is what Kennecott used to be called. So the Bingham Canyon Mine, more commonly known as Kennecott Copper Mine, is the largest human-made excavation and deepest open pit mine in the world. That crazy King Solomon's, all the precious stuff, that special location, if that's the real spot, probably would be, and there are pyramids and mountains and probably a great spot to mine. And then right here in Utah, which is the actual location, well, you got the deepest open pit mine in the world, which is considered to have produced more copper than any mine in history, and also a bunch of gold. It's owned by the Rio Tinto Group, which is a British-Australian multinational company that is the world's second largest metals and mining corporation. It's not American owned, it's British Empire owned. And everything that gets pulled out of those mines gets shipped away, carried away. No American sees it. No American gets it. Doesn't belong to the Americans. Doesn't belong to the Utahns. There's a British group mining it and sending it away. And even more than that, we learned this little snippet. Following purchase of the mine, the syndicate launched the Rio Tinto Company, but at the end of the 1880s, control of the firm passed to the Rothschild family, who increased the scale of its mining operations. Research the Rothschild family on your own. I'm not going to get super into that. I'm just going to say they're one of the banking families. They're super evil. They're definitely part of the great and abominable church. They're totally into turning people captive to them, enslaving people, making people be in bondage to them, and they're in ownership of these mines. And they're sending it all away, carrying it all away to somewhere else, and we never see any of the copper, any of the gold, none of that. We see a lot of plastic, we see a lot of cheap sticks, we see some glass, which is also most of the time mixed with plastic now, and maybe a little bit of steel. So where's all the gold? Where's all the copper? Where's all the silver? Where's all the brass? Here's a look at the Bingham Copper Mine. This is a picture from 1975. Here's another look at it, and you can see just, I mean, what are we looking at? Are we looking at pyramids? Looks like it. Here's another look at it all backed out. I mean, it's like an entire mountain range. They're just mining it. And look at us. This is how we live down here. Little stick houses, little tiny ones, just not even off the ground. Maybe you're in a 2-story house, and then boom, here's what these people are up to. Mining the pyramids that sit right here, deceiving everybody about where they actually live. Kennecott smelter right here. This is so over here on this side, if you go over these mountains, that's the Great Salt Lake over there. And that's where we are right now standing. And that's where you get this huge tower, which is part of the Kennecott mines. Like, it's insane. Like, I mean, they own Utah. Like, it's huge. Kennecott smelter, this is one of their smelter towers, sits right on the Great Salt Lake, right with all these pyramids, and this very interesting ensign that they've set up for a sign. Very similar to the one we see in Camp Pendleton in California, where they're doing the same thing, hiding these pyramids, lying about, I mean, they can't really hide them, but they're lying about what these pyramids actually are. Look at these signs. What are these signs? Very similar signs. Also Camp Pendleton right here, very interesting sign. They set their ensigns for signs. Psalm 74:4, enemies roar in the midst of thy congregations. I just explained this. Your enemies, here's our congregations, here's us, our populations, our normal people, and the enemies are roaring in the midst of us, lying and gutting and pillaging the pyramids and the ancient holy locations. It's saying they're all over there when it's right in Utah. It's right in Missouri. And then what else? This is just a little, you can like look at the tower, the smelter tower I just showed you, and then you can turn your head this way and you can see this. And here, what do we see? Well, here's their sign logo set up for signs. And what do they have to say about it? Think safety. peace and safety, peace and safety, peace and safety, ancient conspiracy, United Nations, Peace Plaza, Kennecott Mining, in Jerusalem, think safety, peace and safety. If this isn't real, how am I putting all this together? I can promise you, I'm not that skilled at deception. I'm not that crafty. I'm not that intelligent to go, yeah, look how this all just matches perfectly. And here's all the scriptures saying it all. What's going on is the scriptures tell the truth and they lie. And they use vain and flattering and smooth words, peace and safety, peace and safety. And they pillage, they plunder, they rob, steal, and kill, and lie, and get away with it. 1 Thessalonians 5:3 again. When they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them. Destruction is knocking at our door. Now let's talk about Geneva, another mining operation on the other side of the River of Jordan. You got Kennecott on this side, and they're plopped down on the Great Salt Lake. They got that whole mining operation out there. On the other side of the Jordan, you've got Geneva mining all of those mountains. So here's a look at one of the areas where Geneva is doing their business, their pillaging. All of this mountain range right here. I'll show you some other pictures of it. Here's another look at it. All of this is just old pyramids that they've been pillaging, gutting, reshaping, whatever they do. Geneva rock again right here, just showing you a different angle on some things. The pictures aren't doing it justice. It's a huge operation. Right down here, you actually have the River of Jordan flowing. Right up here, where you see this kind of these billboards and stuff, that's the I-15. You can actually see a semi truck right there. And then, so like literally, you're just on the I-15 driving, north or south to or from Salt Lake City. This is all surrounding you. Another look at it right here, a little more backed out. You can see this is the 15 with the cars running on it. And then all this mountain range right here is just Geneva doing their stuff. There's a look at their website, and they call this area the point of the mountain. And when you read into it, again, you just see Geneva rock, founded by this Clyde guy, a brother to another Clyde guy who became governor of Utah. So it's just all this. It's all the ancient conspiracy in the leadership positions. They're all doing and coordinating this stuff together, and they're all lying to us about it. It's actually like that. Hard to believe, sucks, because they've yapped at us and told us you're free, you're awesome, you're prospering, peace and safety, but they're killing, pillaging, stealing, robbing, getting away with it. And then you also have the Bumble Hive, which is part of all these mountains, which is the Utah Data Center. This is the Intelligence Community Comprehensive National Cybersecurity Initiative Data Center. All the data that's being stolen and taken from us, this is where it's all being stored, in a place called the National Surveillance Agency's Utah Data Center, which is this right here, which also has the code name Bumble Hive. It is located at Camp Williams near Bluffdale, Utah, between Utah Lake and Great Salt Lake. It sits on the River of Jordan, basically, in between the Great Salt Lake, the Dead Sea, and the Sea of Galilee, Utah Lake. Here's a look at it. This is their data centers right here, but it goes into the mountains. So it's not just this right here. There's a whole lot of other infrastructure, whatever you want to call it, that also goes into the mountains, and it's connected to a military base called Camp Williams. So you've got, I'll show you right here. This is Camp Williams, huge military base. Right over here is all those Geneva pictures I was showing you. Right here is the I-15, and then the Jordan River also flows through here. And then right over here on this side is all of Kennecott. So on that side of the freeway of the Jordan, Geneva mining all those pyramids. On this side of the Jordan, it's Kennecott mining all these pyramids. You also have the Bumble Hive, which goes into those same mountains. That's the data collection center and storage. And you also have right there connected military camp. Because, well, how are you going to have all these secret operations going and not have some military involved? It's there. It's there. So to point this out from an aerial view, so down here This is the Utah Lake, the Sea of Galilee, and then down south more on the screen, not off of the screen, I mean, is where there's the Little Jerusalem, Little Hollywood place. Okay, right here is the data center. Right here is Geneva Rock. Right here is Kennecott. It's like open pit mine area, but then also right here on the back side, right here is where it's the smelter place. And then like this, the River of Jordan runs right through all of this and then dumps into the Great Salt Lake. So you literally have Kennecott on one side. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that right in here is where the military, Bluffdale military camps are at. So you have on both sides of the River Jordan, Kennecott mining those pyramids, also sits on the Great Salt Lake where we saw that tower with the Think Safety and the interesting logo. And then over here on the right-hand side of the River of Jordan, you've got Geneva mining all of those. You've got the River of Jordan that runs right through the middle from the freshwater lake, Sea of Galilee, up to the Dead Sea, Great Salt Lake. And none of this mining is for America. It's all banking family, British Empire stuff connected to military in this Old Jerusalem location where also the Mormons are at, which we're going to start to talk about here in a second. Just wanted to give you another look here. It's pretty, but it's also, when you see what's going on, it's actually pretty ugly. Jordan River right here, and you can see it, but up here is the Bumble Hive. These data centers up here that go into these mountains, into these pyramids, and then just more to the right here, you've got the military camps and all of Kennecott's mining and their operations. And then this is the Jordan River, and you're looking straight up right now at all of Geneva's mining operations. Again, just another look at Kennecott right here. Pretty wild what they're doing to all those pyramids. And then you have other mining districts in Utah, like the Tintic Mining District, as they call it. And what does this look like? Looks like there's a lot of nice pyramids to mine right there. And if this is the Old Jerusalem, King Solomon's location, King Nebuchadnezzar coming and pillaging all the good stuff, and then it gets rebuilt, and what an awesome area it would be to mine. All the precious resources, but then just all the ancient stuff that's inside all of these mountains as well. There's another one right here. This is part of the Tintic Mining District, Dragon Mine, keep out, stay away, and here's some pyramids. Mammoth, Utah, this is an old mining city, and if you look right here, you can see terraces of stonework exposed, and this whole thing is just an old stone pyramid. I've showed you this one already, Silver City, Utah, where you just have this old stone city sitting in ruin, desolate. The mountains above it are just part of it, but that's covered up still. And it's looking a lot like an ancient castle connected with pyramids sitting in ruin. Here's a little video of me walking into one of these tunnels going into the mountain. And you'll see, of course, what they do at all these sites is they bomb it, they blew it up, it's destroyed, and then they send in all the devilish graffiti work. And it's sealed off so you can't get anywhere. This is looking at the Goshen mine. So this is not far from where that little Hollywood Jerusalem set is at. And you see this architecture, stone architecture, sticking out of the mountain, when I would say all of this right here is actually this. But there's just this little piece of it poking out, and all the rest of it has been bombed or whatever and covered up with dirt and all that. And here's a look at it. I'm right here where I was showing you. I'm standing inside of there now, and this is what it looks like. It's this stonework going into the mountain, covered up with a bunch of devilish graffiti. Here's another look at it, and this is overlooking Goshen Valley, which is where the Little Jerusalem set is. These hills out here are these Galilean hills that I was showing you. This is that exact same area. I'm standing on these Galilean hills right here, and there's this interesting architecture poking up out of it. Then you got the Spanish Fork Mine, where same thing, you're seeing this stone architecture poking out of this mountain. And it's overlooking that same valley that I was just talking about. That water out there is the Utah Lake, the Sea of Galilee. And of course, hazardous area, no trespassing, stay out, get away from all this, don't come back here, because there's pyramids that we're mining. Pyramids that we're mining. And here's that little piece of architecture still poking up out of it. Here's a backed out view of what I was just showing you. That little white structure is that right there. But these are just huge pyramids. And then you have the Fillmore mine. I showed you a little bit about Fillmore in an earlier video, but here we go. Mining operation into these mountains, these pyramids. You can see this pyramid shape right here, several of them, very obvious. It's like stacked and layered pyramids, all connected together. Bigger one, but this one's been flattened at the top. Looks like it's pyramidion, has been toppled off of it. And on this same site, here in Fillmore, I showed you this before, but you got the Freemasons, and you got log cabins telling the poor dirt cabin story. And then this building right here is what's left over of the original, what they say was the original Capitol right here. It used to be so much grander than that. And when you read their sign about it, well, here's a pyramid in the background sitting in ruin. Here's some more pyramids in Fillmore. You can make out those triangle shapes pretty well right there. And then you have Park City mines and other mines. I'm gonna stop there. But Utah is a huge mining project, and it's being shipped away, carried away to foreign ownership. Now we get to the part where I think this is in my opinion, I mean, the geography's insane. Like how could you possibly have all that just happen to match? It's not happenstance, it's the true match. But I think this is an even more compelling part of this whole story, because his name, the name of God, Jesus Christ, and I know there's people who talk about, well, you have to use his name in Hebrew and stuff. It's like, we don't speak that language. So his name in our language is Jesus Christ. If I speak in Spanish, it's Jesucristo. If I speak in a different language, you say it a different way. But in English, his name is Jesus Christ, okay? So, and we're going to see that's true right here. And Jesus Christ is the Son of God, the King of the Jews. We're going to talk about his name, because in 2 Chronicles 33:4, he said, "In Jerusalem shall my name be forever." Wherever that real Jerusalem location is at, his name's going to be there. The Lord, who is God, that's Jesus Christ. God is the Word. The Word jumped into flesh, named Jesus Christ. God is Jesus Christ. That name is banned in the Middle East. The fake Israel location, don't say that name over there. Don't do that over there. Wait, I thought the real location would have his name there forever. Don't say it over there. Isaiah 2:3. The word of the Lord from Jerusalem. The word of the Lord will be sent out from that location. So wherever that real location is, his name needs to be there, and his word needs to be sent out from that location. That's the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah. That's the Mormons in Utah. The strongest force for taking the word with the correct name, Jesus Christ, throughout all the world, that happens from Utah. That's the guys in white shirts and ties with the Tribe of Judah writings, the Bible, and the Tribe of Joseph writings, the Book of Mormon. The name of the church that they belong to, that they preach out of, has his name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The books that they carry have his name, Jesus Christ. Bible, all about Jesus Christ. Book of Mormon, I showed you the picture earlier. It says on the title, on the cover, it says, The Book of Mormon, another testament of Jesus Christ. What's coming out of the Middle East? Is his name even there? His name's banned. It's not there, and his word is not being sent out from there. A bunch of nonsense comes out of there. It is these guys in white shirts and ties that carry his name worldwide. And his name is in Utah. Jesus Christ. The Mormon Church, that's the nickname. It's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ. They rep his name hard. And they take his word, the Bible and the Book of Mormon, and they go give it for free to anyone in the world who wants it. His name is in Jerusalem for forever, and his word goes out from that location. And here at the Missionary Training Center, the MTC in Utah, you'll see flags of basically all the nations. But no, the Church of Jesus Christ does not send traditional missionaries to preach or proselytize in Israel, the Middle East location, because they can't. Because the name Jesus Christ banned. No preaching about him over there. So how's that the real location when he himself said, I'm going to put my name there forever and my word's going to come out of that location? One is the real place and one is the false invented place. I've said it 5,000 times. If there weren't an Israel, we'd have to invent an Israel. Isaiah 2:2 expands even more on this and says even more about this location. It says, all nations shall flow unto it. Now this is maybe like the only one that works for the Middle East, because there are a lot of nations that go there because they think it's the real spot. But also all the nations flow to the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah, and Temple Square in Salt Lake City. And when you go to Temple Square in Salt Lake City, where you've got the big Mormon temple right here, and I've showed you the Joseph Smith Memorial Building right here several times, there's this big sign right in front of there that says, the Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2 scripture, it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountains of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. Another match. In the last days, which is now, the Mormon Church says Latter-day Saints, Last Day Saints is part of the name of that church. And that church is literally established in the top of mountains, the Rocky Mountains, some of the biggest in the world. And his name's there, Jesus Christ. That word, both the Bible and the Book of Mormon, is carried worldwide from that location, and all nations flow unto that location. Again, everything an exact match in Utah. And if this wasn't the right place, then this verse couldn't be here. It wouldn't be put here. But this is the right place. This is the last days. This is his name and his word in the top of the mountains in that original location, Old Jerusalem. So here's a little look at Salt Lake City Temple Square. This is the Mormon temple. One of the most insane pieces of architecture out of all the stone architecture in the whole country. Maybe the most insane piece of architecture. And of course, built on dirt roads. No stone for roads. Here's a look at some of the interior. These aren't like pictures I took. These are just available online. They're not like secret pictures or anything like that, but it's mind-blowing architecture inside of there. Here's the stone woman depicted inside of there. And then here's another look at the architecture inside of there. It's very different. It's super different type of architecture. Here's another look at it. Just amazing stonework everywhere, gold everywhere, pillars everywhere. Honestly, kind of looking like King Solomon's type of architecture. Not the silly little model that they've dumbed down and show us and it's the poor dirt rag people. No, when you take the actual description of things from the scriptures, from the Old Testament, and then you look at this stuff, it's like, this is some of the finest masonry that exists. Here's another look at it. Just mind-blowing, incredibly beautiful architecture, exceedingly fine, every little bit masterful. And on Temple Square, it has all the nations' flags, almost all of them, I'd say, because all the nations flow into this location. And there's this sign right there on Temple Square that says, in the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the mountains, and all nations shall flow unto it. That's Isaiah speaking about Old Jerusalem. So this sign wouldn't make sense in this place if it's not the Old Jerusalem. But it does, because it is the Old Jerusalem. This is the all nations flowing unto the place that has his name, where his word goes out. That has the Dead Salt Sea, the Jordan River, the Sea of Galilee, Mount Nebo, land of Moab, Jericho, mining companies that are lying about everything. It's the location. Another thing you could say is, this is the place. What that phrase means is, this is the Jesus Christ place. This is the old Jerusalem place. This is the he died and resurrected here place. This is the high priest killed him place. This is the ancient conspiracy murdered God place. Old Jerusalem, from the scriptures, is Utah. Utah is the tribe of Judah, King David, King Solomon, Jesus Christ murdered and resurrected place. It's the Moses standing on Mount Nebo looking over the promised land place. And then you also have the Utah Capitol building in Salt Lake City, which I believe is just more leftover architecture connected to the Salt Lake City Temple, which I didn't say yet, but I think that is old leftover architecture. Wood carts aren't putting up 40,000 pound stones like that with all the gold and the stone woman and everything that you see. And I don't think they have this display up anymore in the Capitol building, but they used to. And when you look at this display, it calls it a building full of treasure, like the treasures King Solomon had, like that type of stuff. Bird's eye marble, lots of different kinds of marble. One thing it said about King Solomon's temple complex was abundance of marble. It also talked about onyx stones, didn't it? Well, here let's talk about the Utah onyx stone that was used to build the Capitol building, and these other ones as well. You got copper, you got sandpeat, oolite, gypsum, and iron, just to name some of them. A building full of treasure. Here's a look at it. Amazing. Amazing, amazing architecture. Pillars, domes, ancient triangle, all of it. Built on dirt roads with wood carts, and they didn't have enough stone for roads. Here's an aerial view. And like I mentioned previously, they give us this model of King Solomon's temple, and I mentioned earlier, I think that's very deceptive, and it's probably much, much bigger and grander than that. And I think you could kind of look at Salt Lake as potentially that, where you got this piece of King Solomon's temple up here. You've got this piece of King Solomon's temple right here. These are all just huge stone structures. This piece of King Solomon's temple right here. You got this piece of King Solomon's temple right here. You got this piece of King Solomon's temple right here, and on and on and on. You got this one over here. Whoops. That's a real blurry one, but if you go look through this area, it's tremendous stone architecture. And I think what's going on here is pieces of the old Jerusalem still intact right here. And not all of it has tumbled yet. Remember, Jesus prophesied every stone will be brought down. I think there's still more of that has to tumble. And I hate to say this, but what do? They say we're preserving, we're restoring, we're maintaining, we're conserving, whatever they say. All these different words that they use that are lies and vanity and flattering, when what they're actually doing is pillaging and plundering and demolishing. And since 2020, this building right here, that's one of the most mind-blowing pieces of stone architecture in this country, it's been pillaged. Just read it. There's a lot of stuff that is original that has now been taken out. And they say that they're doing work to make sure that if an earthquake hits, it doesn't tumble. But if you read what that is, vertical coring, that sounds like a way where you could have a super, super solid stone structure where walls are 12 feet thick granite. How are you going to tumble that? Well, if you can go vertically core and weaken all that stone all over the place, now you might have a chance. The ancient conspiracy goes all the way. They take their lies all the way. If they get caught in their lies, they lie and lie and lie and lie some more. It's all built on lies. And here in this Utah location, everything's an exact match over and over and over and over again. Even down to his name's here and his word is sent out from here and the nations flow to here. And there's super heavy ancient stone architecture looking a lot like what would have been built in the Old Jerusalem that the scriptures talk about. So Utah, city of David, King Solomon's temple, Old Jerusalem, Jesus Christ murdered, ministered, resurrected. And we got inside of the Joseph Smith Memorial Building, once again, the stone woman and this wreath work with a lot of the same stuff that was talked about when King Solomon built his temple. Town Hall, City Hall, Salt Lake City, Utah. Sun worship, masons holding masonry tools, beehive or firmament, and the stone woman up here depicted several times across this building. And this is just a huge stone castle. Here she is again, sword of truth, scales of justice and mercy, robed woman, Provo, Utah, big stone building, stone woman inside of the triangle. And now finally, in the next video, I'm going to break down who the stone woman is and why she's all over all this ancient stone architecture in the Promised Land.